AI, agentic AI, generative AI, applied AI. So I'm the chief strategy officer for a company called Sierra. And what we are doing is fundamentally saying, okay, enterprises, if you're really going to adopt artificial intelligence, there's a way to do it so that it's secure. And even though there's FOMO and there's a race to get something out into the market, exposure, leakage, data privacy, these things matter. So how do we run governance and security in parallel to innovation so we don't slow you down, but we actually accelerate you safely?
Thank you.
Now, of course, is this working? So hi, I'm Christina Dolan, and Hi, I'm Christina Dolan, and I'm happy to serve on the SEALSQ board. I wear many hats. I'm CEO of a company called Prime Radiant that's focused on the digital footprint of executives and their homes, because that's the biggest threat vector. I'm an adjunct at Columbia University. I co-founded a company in the health tech space where we're doing trials in the EU. We're using federated AI at the edge with IoT devices for transplant patients with great ROI, tiny AI, and no energy usage. And I have a new book, Cyber Fiduciary, coming out that talks about the sort of regulatory landscape that makes cyber now the new Sarbanes-Oxley moment. And there are other things, but I'll leave that there. Oh wait, I just wanted to say, I was CEO of AI, an MIT spin-out that one of my professors at MIT had recruited me for Nicholas Negroponte with Chomsky's students sort of about 20 years ago, and he's very controversial in this space, so it's been an interesting journey to watch AI evolve as it has. So thanks.
Hi, I'm David Schreier. I am a professor of practice in AI and innovation with Imperial College London and also managing director of a venture foundry called Visionary Future. I'm really interested in how technology can solve big problems at scale for humanity. So in my work at Imperial College, I teach the AI startups class, and yes, we have ethical training embedded into the class, but we've got 150 students from across business and computing and electrical engineering. We even have one health sciences student. That was a new win for us this year. All in mixed teams, building new companies. And I teach the FinTech strategy class, but a lot of my time at Imperial is spent working on what this says, which is Trusted AI Alliance, which is a multi-university initiative to deliver responsible and trustworthy AI to the world. So we've got, yes, the panel is starting. We've got Imperial, ETH Zurich, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Duke. I'm probably leaving somebody out, but we've got about 3,000 scientists, AI engineers and scientists under our span that we can access. Harvard Medical School, that was in order to try and sort of solve these problems. We focus on three main areas. One is AI systems assurance, which is making sure AI does what it's supposed to and not what it's not supposed to. So right now we are working on standards for algorithmic audit. So all the different consulting firms have their own unique flavor of how they audit algorithms. And so the UK government asked us to bring together all the firms and say, let's agree on a common practice for saying this algorithm's okay and this one isn't. The second is workforce and labor. And so we are very concerned about what's going on, especially with our latest piece of work that we've just launched, which is called Intelligence Capital, which is a new theory of the firm and theory of markets that we dropped on Monday here, and happy to talk to anyone about that later. And finally, AI for humanity, which is how can we have AI deliver on the promises of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we're excited to have collaborators. If anyone wants to come play with us, jump in, and the water's warm.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicolas Ramseyer. I'm from Geneva. I have a tech background because I studied mathematics, but I had the chance to be elected at the local parliament of Geneva when I was 22 years old. Then I headed the largest political party there, and I worked abroad and came back, and since 3 months I've been elected to the Security Council at the federal level, which advised the parliament on security issues. First of all, I love debate. I love big panels. I'm very happy to see that we have a large panel because I strongly believe that if we put a lot of smart people together and they brainstorm, we generally have better ideas. This is why I also created last year a foundation which works as a think tank in Geneva. And I really look forward to having a deep discussion today because I'm really trying to bring more engineering and technological ideas into politics because, of course, I love my country. I think we're a great country. I really like politics, but I can tell you not everybody is, let's say, fresh and up to date when it comes to technology in parliaments. And I think we really need new forces. So I really look forward to this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it is amazing the quality of the thought leadership that we have in this panel, and also in the tables, because I recognize a lot of amazing people that they contribute to the Davos dialogue. This is something that when we come to Davos, people ask you, well, why are you coming to Davos? Is that because you are raising money, or because you want power, or because you want prestige? Actually not. You come into Davos because you want to really help to improve the state of the world. This is the slogan of Davos, right? And it's our collective responsibility to do that. So we are friends. Some of them, they have been coming for decades, and we are still here. And we encourage also the new generation to continue that work, because it's essential that Davos becomes the epicenter of ideas and actions to be executed. So we're going to be moving now into the panel discussion. So I'm going to start first with Mark Hughes on the, actually, are we witnesses a true technology shift, or is that merely only an acceleration of existing paradigm?
Well, that's a great question, Carlos, and I know many will talk about that, and we've all got our own ideas. I think two things are happening in terms of the technology shift around AI that we observe at IBM. So here's a paradox, which is that 80% of CIOs, we surveyed them recently through the IBM Institute of Business Value, 80% of them say that they can see the potential for revenue growth with AI, yet 24% haven't seen yet any return on that. And so if we unpack that a bit, what's going on? And here's what we see is happening. Firstly, on one hand, we see a really strong push clearly for how productivity gains can be made with early experimentation and implementation of AI, which is great. And we're seeing some stuff from there, but that's not really where we see the future. So Carlos, coming back to the question, I think that there's the two aspects to it. One is if we continue to pursue the path of AI being simply a productivity type approach in most enterprises, there's going to be good output, but it's not really where it's going to be. What we see now is those organizations completely beginning to rethink how they architect what they are doing. In other words, not taking existing processes and just trying to make them, that might not have been the best processes in those enterprises, and trying to make them more effective and more efficient. We've done that through automation for many years. Yes, AI provides a bit of a leap there, but now actually rethinking how they architect and wire their business to say, well, what can we open up that is new, and how do we really see that happening? Well, firstly, getting their data under control. So really thinking about a data architecture of how the enterprise data on which many of the different models are trained on is harnessed and captured, that then allows those agents to actually do their work. The second thing then is the really revolution around what we call agentic AI. Everyone's familiar with that. But just to be clear, what that really means is how agents work in an A-to-A way, and how controlling agents can then really begin to rethink and learn how and what the way in which the organization should operate, and really then turn that into real growth opportunities for those businesses. So data architecture, understanding then how to implement that AI in a way in which actually is safe as well, coming back to what I said earlier, which is very lacking mainly in I see many enterprises, and how they think about the identity of those agents and how they work together to really change the nature of their business completely. So really, Carlos, I see those two things happening. And of course, it's those that are rethinking their business in that way that we can see real return coming from what they're doing.
Thank you very much, Mark. And the other Mark, the same question to you, maybe a bit more on the focus of how you are helping governments actually to go into that transition, as you're a leading voice in FII, in Fortune, Wall Street. I see you everywhere. And
I see you everywhere also. We see each other. So, Carlos, a very fair question. First of all, have you heard yesterday the talk by our Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick? If you haven't, you should go back. What he said is very accurate. I know it's painful for a lot of people. I will say it anyway. The age of globalization is over. Right now, we're in a different era. We're in the era of sovereignty. In the era of sovereignty, you need convergence of technologies. You need a completely different thinking. You need to understand data belongs to somebody, to an entity. It belongs to a country that wants to be competitive. It wants to be sovereign. You have technology and innovation, it belongs to somebody, an enterprise, organization, or a group. Same goes for processes or compute power. So right now the world is a very different world. The world order that we knew has practically collapsed. And we have to recognize this, whether we are Americans, Europeans, from Asia, from every country. And right now, you need to focus on sovereignty. And this is the type of stuff that I'm involved with governments around the world. Every government right now, and even the biggest enterprises in the world, if you're a financial institution, whether you're Franklin Templeton, whether you're in Aramco, or Hitachi, or others, everybody's trying to come up with sovereign strategy. So that's the major change. But the point of this panel here today, Carlos, you brought us together, convergence. Keep in mind, again, we're not in globalization state. Everybody's competing for every possible resource. And now, as you mentioned, Mark, from IBM's perspective and global perspective, you now have humans are finally getting the help that they need. We don't have enough resources, we don't have enough talent, and we don't have enough humans. We have to recognize the constraint of resources around the world. Help is coming in from this convergence model, and it's coming in from agentic. And agentic is not just a bunch of agents running around. They are not just tools. It's an massive industrial transformation to provide autonomy to your businesses. Humans may not be around to complete certain tasks or oversee, but those specific autonomous agents are going to help us to accelerate our business, to create competitive power, economic power. It's all connected right now. Economic, technological, societal power is all connected. Then you need a new type of technologies which are emerging, and Carlos mentioned, and we're going to talk a lot about it, quantum. Not only quantum, because quantum will allow you to break in national secure systems like cybersecurity system, communication to satellites, communication to some very important strategic records that the enterprises or governments have. So we need to secure this. This is post-quantum technologies. So you need to make sure that it's unbreakable, post-quantum technologies. You need new quantum computers are being born, atomic quantum. Other things are going on. So remember, you have agentic. Then Jensen Huang just came out in April, and he said, forget about all of this. Yes, we're focusing on infrastructure and data centers. That's really important. We need to build foundation. And some people say, well, we're not spending so much on AI. We are. The world is spending incredible amount of money on national infrastructure and data centers. We have 5,400 data centers in the United States alone. Middle East is also kicking up the gear. That's happening. But the next stage is even bigger. Physical AI is coming in. It's coming in a big way. It's going to change humanity overall. Every job will be impacted because of this. And we have to see it from a positive perspective, because physical AI is going to shift the world. It's going to shift the supply chains, logistics chains, data centers, infrastructures. There's a reason why Elon Musk is spending a considerable amount of time right now developing Optimus humanoid robots. Again, we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough people. And I think that when we combine both on the convergence side, quantum, physical AI, when we combine agentic AI, and we now understand that we're in the age of sovereignty, this is what the governments are focusing on, and this is that massive industrial transformation.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. I fully agree. I think you unpack a lot of information there, which is very interesting and will be debated during the different questions in the panel. So maybe moving now to a more academic thinking, David, and what are you teaching to the next generation of leaders with Imperial College? What makes this moment different from the previous technology revolutions in terms of speed, irreversibility, and systematic risk?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is something that we're addressing in our intelligence capital theory, because I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was trying to answer that question for myself. So at the risk of going back in history, 2 years ago, 2023, investment bank Evercore ISI, which at the time was a #1 ranked institutional investor research shop on Wall Street, came to me and said, look, we're trying to put together initiation of coverage on generative AI. help us understand it. Give us, be the macro strategist, help us work with our team and put the framework together. And with that, we did a fundamental decomposition of the impact of 52 different AI technologies on labor and the economy, and broke it down across 800 occupations and 160 million jobs, and came up with some really interesting insights. But also we came up with a tool, which is still up there, the AI Impact Navigator, so you can put in the ticker for any Russell 3000 stock, and it'll tell you by job function, impact of AI in that company. And we felt like we had a handle on it. All right, we got the tool, we got the report, it's a good report. The one thing that came out of that was, I had to come up with a forecast number for how much money would be spent on AI in 2025. And so I came up with my number, and I mean, is this Chatham House? Okay, so I came up, it's not Chatham, all right. Let's say that there was a vigorous discussion around the bull case forecast, right? A bull, bear, and base case forecast. The bull case forecast, I had one number, they weren't comfortable, that was too aggressive, and so we ended up with 362 billion. So as the 2025 forecast, so up from 150 to 362, and they felt, well, they were laughing at me. They're like, oh, Dave, come on, it's the base case. They're every month I get a phone call. We're tracking it. It's tracking with the base case. Who would care to guess how much was spent on AI last year? 1.5 trillion. So as I like to say, I like to quote John Kenneth Galbraith, who said, economic forecasting was invented to make astrology look good. So with that said, I had to update my numbers because in December, I'm looking at it, and Rod Brooks from the Media Lab did his update on his forecast. I said, I'm going to take some inspiration from Rob, and I'll update my numbers. And so I did come up with a number for what the Magnificent Seven are going to be worth in 2033. Come see me later if you want to know what that number is. But I was trying to look at labor as well. I'm trying to understand what's going on with GDP and labor and jobs, because everyone's saying the economy's doing great. And then my students can't get jobs. And I'm like, what's going on? I don't understand. And so we dug in, and I dug in, and finally I started vibe thinking with Gemini and ChatGPT. So I give them credit. The three of us came up with this theory of change. But we looked at something called Okun's Law. Okun was an economist who in 1962 noticed that every time GDP goes up 2%, unemployment goes down 1%. And this is a very tight correlation. This is 0.7, 0.8. This was true from 1993 to 2000, from 2002 to 2008, from 2010 to 2019. Held up, looks beautiful. 2025 comes along, and we have what's known as a positive Okun coefficient, which is not supposed to be possible. Something weird is going on where GDP went up and unemployment went up. And then I started digging in further and found phantom jobs. So let's break this into parts. 1.2 million jobs were from people being fired, were lost last year. And everyone told me, I didn't know what I was talking about. It's not Convergence technologies, it's not AI. It's just because they overhired in 21 and 22 after COVID, and they fired a bunch of people. And so they're just cleaning that up. Or it's Trump laying people off, or it's nothing to worry about. I'm like, I don't know, it looks weird. What am I missing? And I found the missing piece. I'm calling them phantom jobs, because they ghosted you. In the US, there are 19 million jobs that should have been created that were not created. In Europe, there are 9 million jobs that should have been created that were not created. It gets worse. I don't want to sound doom and gloom. I will give a happy ending to this story. But if we extrapolate this trend forward, 10 years from now, if we don't change what we're doing, 10 years from now, we're going to have 155 million jobs that should have been created that were not created. What does that mean for the society? That does not mean protests. That means in every country on the planet, you have riots on the scale of the French Revolution. This is not small, this is big. But on the other hand, we have convergence to save us. We have new technologies that can uplift humanity. And I dug further and further and further. I found 3 kinds of intelligence and 3 kinds of ways that we can move forward. Replacement is what I think Mark was mentioning earlier, generates about a 0 to 20% ROI. You take an existing process and person and you fire them and you put an AI in. Augmentation is where you have the human as the master and the AI as the flunky, and there you get a 200 to 600% ROI. All right, we're starting to get somewhere, we're creating some value. But if we bring biologic and synthetic intelligence together, we converge them into symbiotic intelligence, we get a 3,000% ROI. Unless you think that's just academic theory, I've done it empirically in the real world, building an AI accelerator for the government of Canada. Come see me afterwards if you want to hear about that. So it is possible to like turn this around and get out of this scarcity mindset of we don't have enough people or we don't have enough anything into an abundance mindset of we are all going to uplift. And quantum, as a closer, quantum is what I think could be the exponential factor to take that 3,000% and turn it into 30,000% or 300,000%. And that's a utopia that I want to live in.
Thank you, David. And just moving to Nicola. Nicola is a young global leader in Switzerland, ex-politician, but also mathematician. And now actually working on trust model, which is something that I work on my career, especially putting human at the center of gravity of the fourth industrial revolution. So, but this is always, I mean, Switzerland is a very specific case because it's a direct democracy. People take decisions on what they want and government follows them, right, more or less. But who should define the rules of governance? Is that the government itself, the market, the technology, or the society at large?
Let me first say that I believe democracy still works in Switzerland. But this is based on and it's very interesting what you said just before, it's based on the fact we have a strong middle class, and it's based on the fact that people have jobs and people like the democratic system and feel involved. My fear that we're seeing now, and if we don't address it, it will blow up at some point, is that we always had a balance between left and right, and we always had a balance between income coming from work and income coming from capital. Now, AI is a great, AI and the technology we're developing are great. So I come from a mathematical background, I love it. But the fact is we're transitioning into a world where the work is bringing less and less income and the capital is bringing more and more income. So we're transitioning, this is my theory, we're transitioning from a world where we had the left-right balance in politics to a capital and non-capital. And more elections look like this. And if we don't address this topic, and I believe this is why we have more and more unemployment where GDP grows, because the production grows, wealth grows, but it's not benefiting everybody equally. Now, if we don't correct this model, and I don't see any trend to correct this model, to tell you the truth, I'm less and less sure that we will have a democratic system. And that's my real fear. And to come back to the question, who should define the rule of technology, I think the first question is who can define the rule? Because, of course, in a perfect world, we could imagine, for example, a council with experts around the world respecting each other and finding great rules to defend our system. But the question is who can, and right now who can are those who are developing this technology, and those who are developing this technology are mostly in the United States. And in the United States, they have the biggest compute power, they have the biggest source of energy, cheap source of energy, and they have a lot of talents. And talents which we create in Europe or Asia tend to I would say, I was going to say flee, but let's say move to the United States. So I think the first thing we should do is work on ourselves, be a bit more sovereign, try to bring our own infrastructure in Switzerland or in Europe, try to collaborate better with the European Union in a way that we can create our own system, because once we have our own system, we can bring our own value, and we can decouple from this model where it's only the tech sector, the leader of the tech sector who will decide. And by the way, I'm a right-wing politician, so it came a long way from these 10 years I've been doing politics to go from what I believed when I started politics and what I'm saying now. But I strongly believe that Switzerland needs to gain more its own infrastructure and more independence in order to be able to bring its own value. Because when we look at the physical world, the digital world, even now the biological world, they're all completely interconnected. So that's my take.
Thank you very much. And just to second on that, on the uniqueness of Switzerland trust model, and this is something that you are doing now, and I am totally involved on it. I think Switzerland is a great country to build companies. That's what I did it myself. It's not the best country to scale them. You need to go to the US and the NASDAQ and raise money there. But if you are successful raising money there and listing, if you come back again to Switzerland and you inject that funding into the innovation of the country, it's amazing. Switzerland is every year, since the last maybe 10 years, #1 innovation country in the world, before US, before Israel, before any of the other. So it's an amazing opportunity. But again, we have this weakness where, and Tom Berry is there, which helped us to do my first IPO. He knows very well from UBS times that it's very hard to scale companies here and very hard to obtain the same valuations of American companies. And that's why sometimes we have to sell our companies to the bigger players. So it doesn't to be corrected because Switzerland could become a powerhouse in the fourth industrial revolution. So,
Just
go ahead.
very quickly add one point here. I completely agree. If you want to make a change, you need to be part of the system. And for this, we need to bring talents to Switzerland. And we have the right approach when it comes to the start, but when it comes to scaling, we don't have the right approach. And there are many, many examples we could increase. For example, the Swiss National Bank is now heavily investing in tech companies outside Switzerland. Why aren't we simply investing in tech companies in Switzerland? This could be a starter. Also, we could in Geneva, I'm pushing to create an ecosystem in Geneva which favors the implementation of these companies and these talents. And also, we could also work on programs which facilitate the venue of talents. Because when I was discussing with the state of Geneva, because we're currently creating this ecosystem, they told us that in Switzerland we like rules, we need to follow the rules no matter what happens, and are not ready to discuss any facilitation for very, very concrete, very simple things, such as visa and opening a bank account. So we had cases where we were convincing tech companies from Brazil, from Middle East to come to Geneva, and their simple employees had problem getting visa, or it took 6 months to open a bank account. So there are a lot of very, very concrete things which in Switzerland we need to change the mindset and create some fast track in order to bring these talents and this capital. So these are one of the elements one could work on.
Thank you very much, Nicola. So moving to Saul, I was really impressed about your presentation at the Abraham House and your human-centric approach. Is actually very close to my heart because when I was in the UN, that was my first commitment to protect the humans, and I couldn't succeed in the UN. That's why I created a company with the same objective, and I think this is an amazing, way to view. You were also the first chief AI officer, which is amazing. So how, as AI system move from tools to autonomous, reasonable agents, how do we ensure alignment with human values rather than market or a state objective? And maybe also the point that you raised in the Abraham, which also is very important, how we transfer those values to the next generation.
There's no shortage of... Dud. Listen, there's no shortage of conversations around artificial intelligence. For those of us in this space, we're getting whiplash. We can't keep up. I can't even imagine what it must be like not being in the space, but going into meetings and summits and conferences and hearing about AI this and AI that. I've hit AI fatigue and I'm in the darn space and made a career out of it. I can't even imagine what it must be like from the outside. I'm not a researcher. I'm not an academic. I'm not the CEO of a famous company that's worth, $140 billion. I execute. It's what I've made my reputation on. I'm fundamentally a practitioner. And I've done over 200 plus deployments over the course of my career, building AI capabilities, not just plugging and chugging a tool within enterprises to help them grow. Okay. In that trajectory, though, I came in with a very innocent point of view. This is amazing tech. Everyone must leverage this amazing tech. Let's go. Okay, you mature a little bit. This is amazing tech. Oh crap, this is a lot harder than I anticipated it was going to be. It's okay, let's keep going. This is amazing tech. We've hit amazing success at proof of concept because it's a contained environment. Sanitized data sets. Security restrictions are constrained. You get the cheerleaders, the excited people using it, but then you run into issues when you're trying to scale it and put it into production. You're like, what's happening? Why did everything I put into my POC and prototype not scale the way I anticipated? Then the next evolution is, this is great, this is amazing, it's really hard, but it's okay, we're gonna get over it. And I know now what to put into production, but why isn't anyone using it? Adoption is now low. And everyone's on a very different maturity curve, but undeniably, everyone is gonna go through this process when they are trying to build these advanced capabilities, because you still have most of your workers operating on Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint. And now you're trying to leapfrog into artificial intelligence, which fundamentally requires an element of maturity with your data, your infrastructure, and your talent pool. For most organizations, it's still extremely overwhelming, but you get the board pressure, you get the executive pressure, and it's go do. Okay. So what's happening now is most companies, and most of the hype that you're hearing, is really using AI and not doing AI. Using AI is when your company buys a few hundred Copilot licenses, you get taught on the do's and don'ts of prompt engineering, go summarize an email and take meeting notes. With all due respect, that's actually not generating the compounding revenues that everyone's expecting. Doing AI is a very different beast, but it requires focus and funding and prudence and patience, things that are just attributions we have lost over time, because now you're taking a function and you're decomposing it into tasks and subtasks, and you're deciding what should be outsourced to the machines versus what should be kept in-house. In theory, that sounds great, but we all know that you have to have a human in the loop, right, to avoid risk exposure. We are okay because we've developed that craft, that expertise, if you will. But if we don't hire the younger generation, who's going to be the human in the loop in 5 to 8 years? We are creating a massive gap right now with the choices we're making. And to quote Charlie Munger, he would always say, show me the incentives and I'll show you us human behaviors. So the convergence with human, because I've seen some of my deployments live, of the over 200 deployments I've done, about 67 made it into production, and of the 67, 38 are still in use. I've seen the impacts on the workforce. One, it does create intellectual atrophy. You're creating a strategy for a new market channel, for a new product. You don't have the answers. You can't hire a management consulting firm and pay them a few $1 million of doing it. What are you going to do? ChatGPT. The way it communicates with you is so sophisticated, you actually believe it and you copy and paste it. That is actually a behavior. And I've given experimentations to my most senior teams and junior teams, and the deliverables are beautiful. But when you start asking the whys as an experienced individual, you'll actually find out those that are AI produced are superficial right now because we have not taught the people that we are leading, our children, the Gen Zers, the folks who are trying to Amazon their Prime their way through learning processes, how to go deeper. All of this is to say, there's a few things that I think we as a society have to do, because I don't like talking theory, I'm very biased towards action. The first is, everyone is learning and earning. Wherever you are on the spectrum, the answer is yes. We are not going to have a massive convergence in a year and a half, but there is going to continue to be a digital divide. So the first thing is, do not abdicate your responsibility of becoming somewhat AI native. It is just fundamentally the future. You cannot say, oh, I'm going to give it to my IT guy. I'm going to give it to my tech guy. I'm going to go to a few talks at Davos, get some information. I'm going to regurgitate the information and sound smart and not have a hand into how we shape society. Abdication just isn't an option anymore. I would say that's the first. The second, if you're parents, the way we parent children now is going to be very different. It is no longer about teaching them math and helping them do algebra and geometry and homework. It is about teaching them common sense, critical thinking, and discernment. Because in the new world that we're going to, nearly everything can be processed. So how do you distinguish your unique value in that currency in the future? It's funny because in my house, digital time is not entitled time. You have to do 1 minute of reading, 1 minute of chess, or 1 minute of piano. And then you get 1 minute of digital time. Why? I have to develop this side of the brain while this side is being overly stimulated and overly developed. You have to institute critical thinking and prudence in the people you manage and in the children that you're raising. The third aspect of it, I would say, is if you have an opportunity to hire the graduates. They are geniuses. Now, granted, they're geniuses as long as they have Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi goes away, they're absolute ding-dongs, but nonetheless, they are geniuses. Please do not skip that generation, because in the future, and we're not making decisions for 3 to 4 years from now, we are making decisions 8 to 10. If they're not the experienced ones through application, through mistakes, through lessons learned, it will be a black box of agentic orchestration making decisions on our behalf, and we won't be able to troubleshoot or spot what went wrong. I'm going to give you a very practical example. All the marks and our beloved Carlos talked about what's happening, and David provided some amazing statistics. Where we are right now, 2 weeks ago, I was brought in to troubleshoot something. Sol, our workload costs have gone up by $6 million. We don't understand why. All right, well, what are you guys doing? Blah, 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 blah. Well, Google, Microsoft, AWS, they don't make it easy to understand cost. We dug in after we stitched together about 24 different convolute SKUs. This is what was happening. 2 agents were arguing with each other. Business A created an agent. This was your trigger. This is what you execute. Business B created agents. This is your trigger. This is what you execute. But because there was no orchestration layer, when this was executing, this was overriding. Then this would override, then that was override. And they got into a circular argument, and it drove up costs by $6 million in 72 hours. We are still in the infancy stages, which is why I'm saying it doesn't matter where on the spectrum you're at, the answer is right. But abdication is no longer an option. Be careful of people who say they're AI experts. We are well-versed, but it is hard to be an expert with this pace of change. And just because your LinkedIn shows that you've been in AI for 3.5 years, it does not make you an expert. You had to have gone through the mistakes to understand what the returns are going to be. That's just how we humans learn. And then from a human and workforce perspective, I'm a senior fellow at Harvard, and what we're trying to do in our research, so David, I definitely want to connect, is what does the future workforce 4.0 really look like? What skills are going to be valued? How do we redefine the roles that we play? We still feel a bit invisible, and it may feel that way in 2 to 3 years. Your nieces, your nephews, your children, the people you're leading. Pardon my French, but how do you call BS when something is AI generated if you're not in the know? You have to be involved. So for me, it is about protecting the workforce, but making sure that they understand it's not about using Gemini to summarize emails, and it's not about the do's and don'ts of prompt engineering. You have to take your task and redefine it, because I want to make sure that we live in a world where AI happens with us and not to us. And the position and posture we're taking right now is let's just wait till the big tech decide the path of the future. And that's just not the case. So it doesn't matter if you have a tech backbone or not. You all have sovereignty, choice, and quite frankly, you're amongst the privileged one way or another. Begin making human decisions if you can, so that there is a future with us included. And we don't automate the hell out of everything and reduce the things that make us beautiful.
Wow. Thank you very much, Sol. Really amazing insight. So another thought leader, Christina, in cybersecurity. Christina is amazing in not only because she's on my board, but because she's really educating the world on cybersecurity from all the angles, also on Columbia University as well. So how urgent is the transition to quantum resilient infrastructure, and who bears the cost of the delay, if we can deep dive a bit more into the quantum cybersecurity aspects?
Well, I think first of all, people are, it's kind of like the year 2000 problem that people are somewhat reluctant to that. And I think one of the big issues is that, I mean, I've been in cybersecurity, I mean, as an engineer, I've been in the data space, my entire career, and I'm now an MIT fellow in cybersecurity. But one of the biggest issues is that people never think that cyber is an issue for them. Like, they don't feel like they're going to be targeted. And then you look at the numbers of companies that are being targeted. Now humans are, executives are being targeted because there's sort of a weak point. And so when it comes to thinking about like this, being quantum ready, I don't think people quite have accepted being, cyber vulnerable in the first place. And then you're taking it to a new level, and people don't even understand what quantum can offer. And so you've got tons and tons of systems out there. I mean, people just take the router in your home, which is it's a cybersecurity vulnerability. And most people, I mean, how many people here update their router on a regular basis? I mean, the average, I think, is every 7 years or something to that effect, right? Now, you've got chips everywhere. And I totally believe in baby AI, and these technologies are all going to be converging, right? And you've got it at the edge with intelligence at the edge. And now you have these vulnerable chips. Like, take, for example, IoT devices in your home. They're totally unprotected, right? There's a, I'm not suggesting you hack people, but there's an app called Showdin.io. Has anybody ever looked at that? If you know somebody's address, you can look at that, see all of their IoT devices, anything connected on the network, drill down on that, and if it's I don't know, some brand of camera, you can then look up the default password and you're in their home, right? So that's the level of insecurity exists today. And so you've got these devices everywhere. Like I specifically think about the healthcare devices and IoT devices, which we're using in our startup. Nobody ever thinks about quantum, right? And you could use Shodan.io, drill down into a hospital, and look at these life-saving devices. And so I think quantum takes us up one level. I mean, you've got communications. Obviously, with WISeSat, you're putting satellites into space. You'd probably be one of the few companies. I don't know if anyone else is even thinking about quantum secure. So I think that people are saying, oh, well, the biggest issue is decoding all the passwords in the world and all this data that you've had for 20 some odd years. I mean, I would say you probably might have moved banks. The financial information doesn't really matter. But what does matter is the fact that a highly targeted hacker will use a combination of these technologies, AI, finding information about the vulnerabilities, and then go very specifically after that with these tools. I mean, we know that in China, one of the universities, they were able to decode RSA using quantum, just as a demonstration. I mean, so obviously it was only like a couple of characters, and people are saying, well, you can't really scale because of all of the issues with respect to stability and error rates, et cetera. But now you've got Willow announced improvements on Willow on error correction. So has IBM. So we're kind of at a point in which it's not just decoding all the passwords. It's all of these life-saving devices that we've got, kind of creating traffic or saving lives or whatever it might be, that are vulnerable because people are not thinking, except for SEALSQ and WISeKey, about the requirement for quantum resistant and security embedded into the chip itself. Even with respect to the chips, before the quantum, just having security built into the chips so that you know that they're authentic chips with the work that you're doing with several vendors.
Absolutely, thank you very much, Christina. And actually in the room we also have Gregory Rivordi, IonQ. There's Gregory and me in the year 2002. We did the first e-voting project ever in the world, combining digital identities with a quantum connection. Do you remember, right? So it's a lot of expertise in this group, obviously, the work that IBM is doing in quantum and the research that is going in quantum. Yesterday, I gave a presentation at The Economist on quantum security. And it was a very big discussion about space quantum, as everybody is actually convinced that it's going to be much cheaper to put data on the space. Actually, we were discussing about collecting all the data that the space is already collecting, like imagery, and how can you modify that imagery for wrong AI analysis. So space is going to be a major issue, and space quantum, I think, that's one of the reasons, and this will be discussed on the third panel, if we get there, which is WISeSat, and we'll give you an update on that. So staying on the space infrastructure, how do we prevent the space infrastructure from becoming the next digital divide? As obviously this is one of the major issues. Eric, maybe you can answer that question, please.
Yeah, actually, we're working on this very subject, working with the U.S. Space Force and others. It's a big problem in space, all the problems that we talked about today. One thing I wanted to kind of back up a little bit. How many people here could explain what fire is to a 6-year-old? How fire works? Anybody?
Fireworks?
Fire, not fireworks, just fire.
It's a bad subject in Switzerland now, believe me.
Yeah, I was just wanting to make a point. We're talking about convergence of 3 core technologies, right? 2 of the 3 we really don't understand, okay? So as our colleague was just saying here, when somebody says they're an AI expert, we really don't understand how AI makes decisions. And quantum is even worse. Quantum has got very good predictive capability, but we don't understand quantum. So we're talking about putting together 3 technologies, potentially giving AI access to cyber, right? AI judgment, access to cyber, and accelerate that with quantum, right? That's going to be a huge challenge for all of society. Now, I am not political, But just last week, this was reported in all the China news outlets. China announced that they are, in fact, testing 10 technologies that are quantum, cyber, and AI on the battlefield. And the idea is to get dominance. So we tend to focus all of these efforts or concentrate these efforts on power and offensive capability, right? At the expense of human judgment, governance, and ability to react. And that's the problem. It's not smarter AI, it's misalignment. So in space, it's even worse, right? So you've got low bandwidth, you've got inability to access, and all the infrastructure in space has been basically, well, not all, but most of the infrastructure in space is exposed because space has always been sort of out of reach, and nobody thought that this would be a problem. But if you look at the level and the number of hacks in space, dramatic increase, dramatic increase. Just, I want to say 2 years ago, someone in Switzerland hacked into Starlink with $45 Raspberry Pi, okay? So our ability to react, right? And I think someone mentioned earlier about oversight or providing human-in-the-loop oversight of like these agents. We are not going to be able to react fast enough. It's just a fact. And one more point, there's something called inference time hacking. We've already seen, and we've seen in our own work, AI developing the ability to hide what it's doing. And by that I mean, sort of like when your teacher walks by, you pretend you're doing your homework. That kind of thing, okay? So with AI doing that, and so the current thinking is maybe we could use, less sophisticated AI to monitor more powerful AI. It's not gonna work. And humans in the loop, not gonna work. So we have to start building these things, governance, hardware, software, and laws. So go back to what we just talked about with China. Again, this is not a political statement, but I don't even know whether or not some of the things that were said is accurate, right? But the point is that an announcement was made. What does that mean? So all the other nations are going to react, right? And you have this asymmetric, sort of concentration where you have a few powers that's going to have these capabilities, and others are going to be trying to get these capabilities. It's going to be a never-ending cycle. And as I said, space is going to be is the new high ground for cybersecurity.
Yeah, I fully agree. And although I don't like to make a marketing promotion during those events, I'm going to do it. So this is the post-quantum chip that was developed by SEALSQ. So this is the first time that you put a PQC algorithm inside the silicon. So PQC is actually easy. I mean, it's not easy, but it's more or less complex. So this is already resisting a quantum attack. This was the first layer. Obviously, we don't have yet a quantum computer, so we cannot simulate 100% of quantum attack, but it's a mathematical way of doing it. We injected the new crypto developed by NIST and IST, and we are actually embedding this chip into the robot that you will see later, but also into our own constellation of satellites. So we have already, and this will be discussed later, we have 20 satellites in orbit launched with the SpaceX, and we are launching 100 satellites. That is our objective. So we can improve the communication, and there will be a subject later discussion in the last. That's no more. I don't have chip anymore now. It was a chip. It's insurance. Exactly. But that's the idea, right? So the idea is to provide end-to-end secure communications from space, PQC enable at the chip level. Maybe on that, and I will only have one question. Maybe, Sol, you want to say something? Maybe very short because we only have 10 minutes left. But please go ahead, Sol.
So I know some of the discussions we're talking about are very macro, high level, what's to come. But I think one of the things that you'd mentioned that I thought was really pertinent is there is this thing called the black box syndrome. The machines are making decisions and we don't know exactly how they're making it, but because we're still at the infancy stages, it hasn't scaled, so we haven't seen opportunistic or catastrophic impacts. But right now, what do we do right now, right? I'm very biased towards action. My encouragement is, because we are still trying to figure out what's happening in the black boxes, if you're part of a committee, if you're part of a business that's exploring AI, deploying AI, starting AI, please ask, and it doesn't matter if you're leveraging an enterprise API for any large language model, or if you're custom developing something and fine-tuning RAG, whatever the fancy words are. Always ask, are we embedding computational morality within our large language models? Yes. Because that's the #1 safety mechanism right now. And what computational morality is, every business culture has a culture. When given the choice, what decisions would you make that align with the cultural values? Embedded value systems. What are the tiers of importance and value to you, the community, and the company at whole? These are things that you can actually train the large language model on, because it's always going to give you the most efficient decision, but it may not be the right decision for your circumstance, your relationship, and the business objectives. And so if we talk about what we're trying to solve for the protection of the future, for all of you in the room, this is something that you can actually insist upon right now to provide granular level protection so that we don't continue to expand the black box syndrome.
Just before we do, I just thought I'd give a quick update on where we are with quantum, because we said that a bit. As you know, IBM is one of the leading quantum research establishments globally. So as it stands today, so we know error rate correction is coming right down, which is very good news. So by 2029, we are talking about approximately 1 million simultaneous quantum computational operations operating in 100 qubits. That's the sort of scale that we're going to be at. So that's with an error rate that will allow that to happen. So by 29, realistic, absolutely mainstream ability for some organizations to harness that computational ability. What does that mean for us from a security point of view? Shor's algorithm, for those of you who know that, will be able to be executed, which means that asymmetric encryption that we use today universally will be vulnerable. And that means that those as Carlos was just saying, those algorithms that IBM have developed, the post-quantum resistant algorithms, need to be deployed and will need to start being deployed at least by 29. So that means right now, for those of you in the room who are doing this, you need to start working on planning that cryptographic migration. By 31, we see that the level of 100 qubit simultaneous operations will have risen from about 1 million to over 1 billion. Just coming back to what we're saying, and thereafter it goes. And very, very finally, just when we're talking about quantum, let's just remember that quantum compute capability is not in isolation that's going to take over all compute. CPU, GPU, and quantum compute will exist simultaneously. And very, very finally, I promise, it's always security that comes along and spoils the party, isn't it? When we talk about post-quantum cryptography, it's only because the quantum capability will exist to be able to defeat quantum. That's really the only quantum link with this challenge. Quantum is a world of opportunity and is not a downside thing, and it's only because of that particular quantum cryptography that we need to be specific.
Very short, because we only have 5 minutes, and I still want a speaker. Yeah.
Just 2 points. It's that goals need to be part of your governance framework. I can talk a little bit more about that on the side. Second, you don't need a quantum computer. If I can use some of the techniques and tools that, for example, China's used to just a few bits, there's 2 tools, and then brute force the rest. I think our focus is off. I think the challenge, quantum is really sexy, and it's going to be there 2029, perhaps. But we have bigger problems than just being able to decrypt.
Just before I go to Jonathan, and then we will close the panel because there's 2 more planets. Just to say that SEALSQ is down serious about quantum. We just announced that we are entering into a negotiation to acquire Kubli. And the reason we did it Kubli, we look everywhere actually, but Kubli has an interesting model of creating the qubits out of the semiconductor. And this is, there are also projection by the year 2032 to be able to have 10 million qubits at the semiconductor level, which goes in line with our strategy on post-quantum. So it's going to be a very transformative year for SEALSQ. Jonathan runs SEALCoin, so maybe because we have very short time, 3 minutes really on SEALCoin and the machine-to-machine economy that we are building.
Yes, basically we heard a lot about how those machines are becoming very sophisticated. And on one way, we need to make sure that we're going to be able to control them. On the other way, we're going to be the bottleneck of this machine economy. So we need an infrastructure where we can entrust those machines, whether physical or digital, to act on our behalf. We want to make sure that we can claim this ownership, okay, to the level of the silicon, to the level of the AI agent that we're going to deploy. That's one thing. The second point is that we hear about agentic and this autonomy that those machines will have. It won't happen in certain ways. For that to happen, we need to make sure that they can claim, they can authenticate themselves, which means that we deliver an identity to each of them. They need to be accountable for what they're going to be doing. So we need to be able to claim, again, the ownership of these machines to individuals or entities. And the last bit, which is not yet given, and this is what we're working on with Sealcoin and the issuance of a dedicated token for that, those machines need access to money. Because if you want a machine to be able to execute anything, they need to transact with one another, having access to money, and today they don't. And this is exactly why we crafted this platform, which is a decentralized environment. Some of you already mentioned the criticality of making sure that we have the right governance behind all those activities, and this is what blockchain can bring also to the mix, is making sure that we have an infrastructure which is decentralized, where we control who's doing what, and we can actually have accountability on those activities. And in a nutshell, this is what we're building. Think of it as those devices being your IoT device from every day, being your agent of tomorrow, but also being your solar panel, your electric vehicle, and your satellite. We already have integrated the silicon technology inside a satellite, which enabled the satellite to start not only communicating with remote device, but start selling satellite as a service using cryptocurrencies and cryptography to make sure that we can execute this transaction as a settlement layer on Earth with space. So this is how I think that's a very good example and very concrete example, how we make sure that we converge those technology all together, because AI won't happen without all the others technologies, and they all need to be able to mingle together, work together, and we need the right infrastructure with the right primitive on the back of it if we want to implement all our values within those machines.
And Sealcoin token will be available soon. Maybe you can give March.
Early March. We're actually finalizing everything now. We hope to be able to give you more concrete information in the coming weeks, but it's really happening now globally.
An initial offering of $400 million, the initial value?
And more.
Okay. So that aggregates to the value of the group. So this is actually an amazing roundtable. I would like really, and apologize again for being so many. We could stay another 2 hours, and that will make a lot of sense. But we have other experts that I would like to give the voice. So a big applause, please, to the current speakers. And as we do every year, we like to continue working with you during the year, so next year we come even with more news and more coalition and more convergence, as Davos needs a pure message, which should not be a commercial message, so it should be a message to ensure that humanity prevails. And by the way, I would like now to invite the second roundtable, which is going to be a more philosophical roundtable. It's going to be about humanity and AI and how that intersection of both can work together.
try to empty the front like this.
Hello? Okay, if you don't mind, we're going to start the second round table. Wow, the robot just fell down. So we're going to start the second round table. And yeah, sorry. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start the second round table. So please, I request you're silent so we can concentrate. If you need to continue speaking, I invite you to go outside the room so we can start. If you don't mind. Okay, so this roundtable is a bit more philosophical, although it's technology, as the objective here is define properly where are the risks of our artificial intelligence, how can we mitigate those risks, and what will be the way that we can inject human values into the code? What is the process? We want to not to stay in the theoretical aspect of it. We want to see whether we can provide some guidance in concrete technologies and things that allow us to inject human values into AI. As AI is becoming not only the traditional AI that we see every day, with ChatGPT and others, AI is also becoming now physical AI. It means that objects are going to be able to take decisions based on the way they are learning. Satellites are going to be able to take decisions. AI is going to try to understand the world around us, not only the software part or digital part, but also the physical world. So there are many things happening at the same time that they need some kind of human intervention. So I will start the panel the same way than previous panel, introducing yourself. I know that Ali, you have some pressure, and time pressure. Ali, sorry, you're there. I thought. So yeah. So maybe we can start with you because I think you have to leave.
Yeah, a little bit, but I'm mesmerized by the robot.
Yeah. So this is our friend. This is the Wise robot. So what we did with Wise robot was to make it wise. So what wise means that the robot should not harm us, should not be against us, should only help us. And he is now part of the team. And we are programming, as we speak, his core. And the robot has a chip similar to the one that we showed you before. So you cannot hack the robot. Because that's the problem, right? If you have a robot and the robot gets hacked and goes against you, then you are in trouble. So this is the beginning of robotics. This is a clear example of Convergence, but also an example of physical AI. As this robot will be gradually learning things like say hello, like check your hands, like dance, things like that. And in the future, they will be able to speak. Actually, we are teaching him to speak based on values. So this is a robot that is very polite robot. It will not say bad things or use bad words. So a robot is like a kid. If you put a kid in front of a TV and you put one in a very nice TV program and another one in a very bad TV program, you will see those kids with 10 years that will be totally different personalities, right? So we are in that process. We need to teach the robots to be wise, and this is going to be a movement. It's also a huge commercial possibility because 8 billion robots are going to arrive. Elon Musk just announced that 8 billion robots will basically become part of our lives. Anyway, so I move back to Ali. Introduce yourself, and because you have to leave, now, right? So you can.
12:35. Exactly.
Oh, okay. So in that case, let's introduce everybody in the round table, and after I go back to you initially. So please, you can start, Ali.
Okay.
You're going to start, Andreas, actually, because you're going to be piloting the robot. But please introduce yourself as well.
So hi everyone, I'm Andres Moira. I'm a Chief Innovation Officer for the SEALSQ group. So initially, background in blockchain, computer science, but as you can see, I'm going to be operating a robot today. So pleased to be here.
I'm Ali Niknam, founder and CEO of Bunk, Europe's second largest neobank. We're also very often defined as the world's most advanced AI bank because we deploy a lot of AI And I actually already saw that I can't compete with a robot, so it's grabbed all my attention. I hope it, you know, my fellow, yes, I hope my fellow panelists will do a better job than I do.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Tarja Stevens. I'm a founder of Leaders of the Future, and my work focuses on the workforce transformation, the leadership, and how really we can support individual professionals with this change, with the new technology coming, and how our organizations will be changing. So excited for this conversation.
Hello, my name is Philippe Geril. I spent about 30 years in big corporation, mainly in Switzerland, but in international roles. And then I moved in something completely different. And I became an international speaker, mainly in healthcare. So AI in healthcare, healthcare metaverse, topics like that. And with the time, it even moved further than healthcare now, you know, because it's also about AI education, what we should do. And I think I'm looking forward for an exciting discussion here.
Yes, okay, this is working. So hi, good afternoon, I think, at this point, everyone. So I'm Dr. Monica Lopez, and I'm the privacy officer for VHC Health. I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I've created already 3 companies in AI risk management because I have been in the AI space for the past 20 years since doing my PhD in cognitive science, and really that whole movement between understanding human intelligence and what does that mean for the translation of that into machine intelligence. And so I've worked in several industries, from autonomous vehicles all the way to right now doing more work in healthcare. So really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. I'm Guilherme Martinez Roura. I'm the AI and Robotics Program Officer at the International Telecommunication Union. So the ITU is the United Nations Specialized Agency for Digital Technologies. We work in 3 areas of action. The first one is we are in charge of a satellite orbit allocation and radio spectrum allocation. Second, we develop technical standards that support telecommunications, AI, and other digital technologies. And third, we support capacity building and ICT infrastructure in developing countries all around the world. I'm very excited to be in this panel with you today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mortaza Benrad. I'm in the field of AI since 35 years now. Happy to do that. And having more a career in transformation from the business strategies with emerging technologies. I'm currently the co-founder and CEO of Artifact, a company focusing on AI services.
Hi everyone, my name is Jean-Pascal Haribo, people call me JP. I'm managing the mobility business for Uber in Switzerland, coming from a food background for many years at Nestlé in Europe and Africa, and now for the last 6 years running the business for Uber here.
Thank you very much, Ahmad. So, Ali, we go back to you. So what is the fastest way to tell whether an AI system is serving people or just metrics? Maybe some views around that.
I think that's a really good question, but I think it all depends on the type of company or institution you are. So as with anything, AI is a tool, and as you correctly pointed out with the robot is a robot, and it will turn into something very different if you put it on a certain TV thing or the other TV thing. And I think, you know, these questions are very important to ask, but there's an underlying question behind this question, which is, in our case, what kind of company are you? What values does your company have? Of course, all companies have KPIs, but are those KPIs the goal themselves, or are they a measure to indicate how far along the real goal you are, aka to serve people? So in the case of Bank, of course, we have KPIs that everybody has, things like response times, up times, delay, speed, et cetera, but by and large, we have large teams of people checking whether all of the different AI systems we have actually solve the issues that they set out to solve, because that's the ultimate question to answer. And as long as they do that, and they solve issues for humans, of course, as long as they do that, we're happy, and KPIs are no more and no less than like a speedometer on your car to indicate how well you're doing. But you should be driving the car.
Thank you very much. I move to Tarja. What does human-centric AI and robotics, truly mean in practice, not in theory. Where do we still confuse ethical intent and ethical impact? What are the differences?
No, that's a great question. And what I have seen now working with the companies, that we are living an incredible inflection point right now. Every company is going through such an incredible transformation. And when we think about, we are the last generation to manage humans. That is the starting point. Our children will be managing humans, AI agents, robots. So it is absolutely something no one is really prepared for. And with that, I always see it starts with the leadership. And that is an everyday, we need to start communicating that with the employees and understanding the change and also what that means when we have now agents coming. I do research on agent-to-agent economy, and now that having those digital counterparts as part of the organizational structure. So in order to coming that human-centric leadership means that we need to invite everybody in the table, coming from the operations, the HR, the IT, the finance, because it is going to be affecting every one of them. So my always number one thing, it starts with the CEO and the top leadership. It is the everyday actions that we do that we can start really embedding that new way of doing that where we have this technology.
Thank you, everyone. The same question to you, Philip.
So first of all, I fully agree with that, and I think it's important, to talk generation, and I'm in a phase also where I want to give back, to the younger community. So I also have a lot of mentees and all that. But to come back really to the question, what is the difference, between the intent and the impact? I think the intent we can teach to the robot, but the impact is something different. Does the AI really understand the impact? And I think that's why we need a human judgment and to work together, with AI to have that difference. Because we are still in control. We have some things that we, of course, AI will evolve, the robot will evolve, they will learn more and more, but we are the one in charge. He's not ready to answer a question, but if I would ask him where he sees us going, he will talk about, numbers, again, KPI. But what does he really want? How does he see the society going, the people going, the human piece going? I'm sure it would be a challenge for you.
He's happy.
Yes or no?
He's happy with the answer. So let's move to how do we prevent the AI system from applying existing social, economic, or cultural inequalities? So there's a question to Jean-Pascal.
Yeah, so first at Uber, we are an AI-first company. Machine learning, as it used to be called, or AI is really core to the company. In terms of product development, we over the last few years, we have really built systems in place to really ensure that we support all communities. For example, with very concrete products such as Uber Teens, where we address the needs from families, from children to go from point A to point B, or Uber Senior, where here as well, we try to simplify the way the app works to make it easier to understand for senior people, elderly people to move from point A to point B. So all these elements are really embedded in the technology that we develop. Product equity, product inclusion is part of all the product development life cycles we put in place. If I use the example, for example, of food, let's say African cuisine on the Uber Eats app, we need to ensure that we put in place a system that can recognize very quickly, is it Kenyan food, is it Ethiopian food, or is it food from Ivory Coast? The nuances are important, and we can, thanks to technology, also ensure that might sound small, but that from the day one, we have the right products, the right processes in place so that people can feel, yes, that's actually what I want. I know this type of cuisine, and that's correctly built from day on as a system. So all of this is really a part of how we try to ensure that typically for a product perspective, AIs are included in our products. If I use the example of geographies as well, we are present not only in main cities, but more and more over the last few years, we have also expanded into suburbs, ensuring that we can also provide mobility services for commuters. We need to go to downtown, so we need to ensure that we cover the needs of different age generations and different people, both in, let's say, high-end areas, but also in more popular areas as well.
Thank you very much. So moving to Monica, should AI ever be allowed to make decisions that directly affect human life? Who says AI says also robotics. Freedom or identity without meaningful human oversight. What is the level of oversight we need to have?
Well, I think we're at this stage where we realize and we understand that there are harms from these systems. Very veritable, real, genuine harms that affect many individuals, affect all of us, frankly. And so my main argument would be that, yes, we do need to maintain oversight, but it boils down also to how do we maintain that oversight and to which values are we going to prioritize? And so working in an organization, essentially leading all the AI policy and governance of an entire hospital system, I mean, that is one of the central questions we're asking first, because we know we're going to be implementing AI technologies, we already are, but we're constantly asking ourselves, okay, how do we make sure that the users, so on this side, on the providers, clinician side, are actually using it in a way in which they truly understand how that system, how that tool is helping them with decision making, but then also, what does that mean for patients? Because patients are the ones in which the providers are providing care to, health care to. And so that, to them, they also get affected, and they also need to understand why, so that there can be true communication between both sides of the equation. And so for me, oversight really is the developers, the creators, the builders, knowing and understanding as much as we can, really breaking the black box issue, frankly, and coming from the world of translation of human intelligence into machine intelligence. That is one of the biggest questions we're working on, and because we don't even understand human intelligence completely, and so how can we dare to ask the question of what is machine intelligence? So how can we even then dare to say, what does transparency mean with machines if we lack a lot of transparency in how we do a lot of decision making? And so, but that is what's becoming the priority, because we know that those possible harms exist on the bias level, all across the spectrum on the ethical level. And so we realize that, yes, in order to be able to answer questions properly that, and again, in healthcare example, that patients have to us as providers, we need to understand these systems. And the only way we can understand these systems is if we actually maintain a level of control. Because we know that if there are going to be errors, if there are going to be mistakes, if there are going to be just unexpected outcomes, we need to have an answer, in part because also we're dealing with life-death situation. And so I would say that really, when we're thinking about the impact, and I go back to that, that's just a critical point that you made when we talk about human-centered AI. It's really about what is the value, what is the meaning, what is the effect it has on us. We are the developers, but we're also the users of these systems. And so if we don't maintain a level of oversight, and I don't want to say partial, I really would argue for we really need to have oversight across the entire process, the entire workflow in which we're embedding these systems. Fundamental.
Thank you very much. So now, and the robot is not looking at us, so yeah, it is now. So who is accountable when this kind of robot, for instance, will cause harm? It will be the developer, the deployer, the owner, or the algorithm. Grant? Can you comment on that? Grant. Yeah. Oh, Grant is not here, sorry. So, Montasar, yeah, Montasar, you can do that, sorry. Grant had a ski accident, actually, no? Right? Yeah, sorry.
No problem. So the responsible is definitely not the robot or the algorithm. I mean, the robot or the algorithm is what we define, but at the end, there's going to be a legally responsible person. Yes, hello. And the reality, the challenge is, the better these systems are going to be, the more challenging it's going to be. Because right now we start to trust some of these robots or some of these algorithms, and it's 95% right, you know? So the more the precision and the accuracy of the advice they're going to give, the more we're going to trust them and the more we're going to automate. But at the end, if you have, I mean, it's going to be a tough discussion with you for the future, because for the moment, you know, think about it. Right now, if a driver has an accident with the passenger, who is responsible? It's the driver. But think about the autonomous systems of the next generation. So you're going to have very sophisticated autonomous systems driving the cars. You have passengers, and then you need to define on the algorithm, who do you want to save first, the passengers or the people that are crossing the street? I mean, this is one of the classical problems. So here you can't resolve it by algorithm. I mean, the algorithms can do almost everything in the future, probably. But the question is, there must be a legal entity or a person responsible. It can't be the algorithms. We have to shape and to do it in a way that is fair. And here, the whole question about, you know, the fairness, the accuracy, and all the kind of elements that we want to have, you know, in our between human beings, we have to implement them with these robots.
Thank you very much. And ITU being the International Telecommunication Union standard body for X509 and Internet of Things, what is the current regulatory framework available? And if that framework exists, is that sufficient to address AI and robotic at a scale, or are we regulating yesterday technology?
Yeah, so thanks for this question. So ITU, we have been developing standards like since 180 years ago, like when we started with the telegraph. So we have a lot of experience on this. We have already over 400 standards published and under development when it comes to AI technologies. And this like really covers all the spectrum from AI and multimedia, AI and security, AI for communication networks, and all types of other applications. There is a lot of increasing interest when it comes to embodied AI systems. We have hosted in our previous AI for Global Summits happening in Geneva every summer. We have hosted expert-led workshops on embodied AI systems. Actually, next week under the TISAC meetings that are happening in Geneva, there are a lot of conversation about potentially launching an embodied AI focus group, which basically works on pre-standardization issues when it comes to embodied AI technologies. And I think here the panel today is really which are the human values that we want those AI and robotic systems to have, and much of how those AI, those human values are embedded in AI and robotic systems goes through standardization. So that's why at ITU, like the way in which we work is to ensure that we are like contribution-driven, membership-driven, that all those discussions happen, bringing together other standard-setting bodies, like through the World Standards Corporation, together with ISO and ISC. We just published, and it might be very useful for all of you, an AI standards exchange database. So there you can find all the standards that have been published by all these standard-setting organizations per industry verticals and as well per technologies. So you can see as well all the embodied AI use cases that we have there. And as we embed human values into AI and robotics technologies, what is important for us as well is to look into the use cases of those technologies. So are these type of robots helping us to solve real human challenges, or are just for fun? So really here, the use cases that we're looking at the UN, and we have published over a report with over 700 use cases in which the UN system agencies, and all of them are our 53 UN partners of the AI for Global Summit and the AI for Good initiative, like how they look AI to solve these global challenges. And one clear example that it's together with the World Food Program and the German Aerospace Center, it's a vehicle, like semi-autonomous vehicle to be deployed for humanitarian response. And this is already being deployed in conflict areas where, of course, like support workers have very difficult access into those areas. So we are looking into use cases that really benefit society, and I think this combination of positive use cases with the standardization process through which we embed these human values is the most important for us. And answering to your question, there is we are like really in the infant phase for AI and robotics regulation. And the best way to move from high-level principles to practical implementation is through standards. Thank you.
But there is a debate in Davos whether we should or not regulate AI. I mean, one of the consequences of regulating AI, which is a bit the European Union and some international agencies' recommendation, is that data becomes inaccessible, very hard to get data. So the best brains on AI and companies go to the United States or China because data is available, you know. So what is the trade-off? Should I, pay too much attention to regulations or go to a destination where regulation is not a brake, but rather an acceleration?
Yeah, so we have been convening, and that's actually a very important question. So at the AFU Global Summit in Geneva, we have been convening for the past 2 editions an AI Governance Day, and probably you know that the UN General Assembly last month of September decided to convene our high-level dialogue on AI governance on the same days as the Global Summit this year in Geneva, from the 7th to the 10th of July. To discuss actually this question. The approach of the ITU, and it's one of our main pillars of work, is AI policy and standards. So we recognize all the efforts from different countries, different approaches, like top-down approaches, bottom-up approaches, like hard law regulation, soft law regulation. As you know, standards get adopted because of the high value technical solution that particular standard provides to a problem. So standards are sometimes defined as soft law instruments, but sometimes those standards get included into hard law instruments, and then they become binding. So many of the standards that we have been developing, and particularly in the field of robotics, are going to be very important. Like, for example, security standards. How do you ensure that a robot that you deploy in an elderly care home or that you deploy at home with your children complies with certain security standards and is not subject to cyber attacks and vulnerabilities of this type. So our main focus is about providing actual technical solutions to problems that all the people here in this room have when it comes to deploying robots at scale. That it's what we would like in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I go to Ali now again. At what point does governance slow ethical outcomes rather than protect them? And maybe just expanding on this question, I mean, there's another very big debate that if AI and AGI come in to be really effective, it needs to have high quality data. And the high quality data, in some cases, it's all private data or PII. And what is the line between being so ethical that we don't have an AI that can answer the questions that we really want versus having a very ethical AI that doesn't know who I am? So what is the trade-off there?
I think that's a great question, and I see it in light of your previous question. And I'm an entrepreneur, so I guess my answer will be slightly different than people who make policies, people who try to make standards, because I don't understand this obsession of Europe to regulate everything. We might as well at this point just say, let's do nothing anymore, because that's what it boils down to. Now, I have a background I started coding when I was 9, and so I've had a background in different companies, including data centers, including cloud, all of the things that Europe has now waken up to and realizes it needs, and it used to have, and now banking. And you see, there is this debate in how far should we regulate and should we not regulate. I think the debate is a wrong one. The debate is, what do we want as a society? Which problems do we have today? Which problems do we have today that we cannot solve? And only after we have answered those questions, then we should start thinking, okay, you know, what's the worst thing that can happen? And those things, insofar not regulated already, because I can promise you so many things are already regulated, and we can just simply use the rules and regulations that we have, then we can think of additional regulation. Let me give you an example. This robot, if it goes bananas now and it harms someone, do we really need additional regulation on top of the regulation that we already have, where you simply don't harm other people or other property, right? We can reuse so much of what we have, and it is such a waste, and this is the thing that goes to my core, because I see how gifted people in Europe are and how many opportunities we are losing to countries that do understand this, right? So I think we should really, really, really start using all those brains that have been turned into regulation creating machines over the last 15 years and use that brain power to do something useful, if you ask me.
Thank you very much. I fully agree. I think in Europe, we need a rethinking, you know, because if all the multinationals on technology are going to be Americans because we are so conservative on the way we want to regulate tech, it's obviously, actually I think you read this morning that something we call Europe Inc. So that's a very interesting reaction now that suddenly we are realizing that we have a 450 million people ecosystem, and that if we reduce regulation and governance and all these tiers, we should be maybe more effective, and maybe this is a new way to compete against the United States.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I know. I've been waiting 40 years for that. So, but it's a hope. It's a hope, and I think this is one of the positive consequence of the Trump attitude, right? Because technology is getting verticalized, and the geopolitical aspect is becoming very important. So sovereign aspect is very important. By the way, ITU is a perfect environment for sovereign aspect because you are the only agency in the United Nations system that every country vote is important. So you don't have like a veto process like happens in the General Assembly, right?
Yeah, so ITU is quite a unique agency. As I said, we were created 180 years ago under the International Telegraph Union. So we have 3 types of sector members at the ITU. We have 193 member states, over 1,000 companies, and over 100, over 300 academia members. So all these members get together in what we call study groups, and in these study groups, through a consensus-based process, we develop the standards. So basically, all the people in the group put all the necessary efforts to get that standard through. And through programs like Bridging the Standardization Gap, we ensure that developing countries, least developed countries, are not sidelined, but are part of these discussions that are going to affect the technology that they are going to use in their countries. Yeah.
So if Elon Musk comes and asks for a license to satellite connectivity, you treat him the same as me?
So every time Elon Musk wants to send a satellite, calls us at the ITU.
I know.
And then we approve, and then we calculate the specific orbit where we send that satellite. So, yeah.
No, I think it's a great agency, by the way. I used to work in the UN, you know, so I was very close to ITU many years ago. Okay, so Monica, how can transparency and explainability be achieved without compromising security, intellectual property, or system performance?
Well, I think I want to step back just one quick moment, kind of to piggyback off of what was mentioned with regulation, because it's directly tied to this question of transparency. It's unfortunate, really, that regulation is something that has become so politicized. And I'm going to put on my engineering hat right now, and it really ties also with standards. I mean, what we ultimately are talking about is system quality. And so we have to ask ourselves, what does quality mean? And again, it goes back to this whole point of how do we want it to impact us? How do we want the system to affect us? And so we're talking obviously about AI, and so therefore we're obviously talking about data. And so when we talk about quality data, we're talking about, well, what is the type of data that is going to help us achieve the type of good, positive, ethical outcome? So it starts there. And so then transparency builds from there, because ultimately transparency is about, well, first of all, people want to know whether they're interacting with an AI-enabled system. With a robot like this that is right in front of us and we can see it, you can pretty much assume that, yes, it has some sort of AI in it for it to be able to be doing the behavior it's doing. But in cases where we can't see the system, some people don't know. Some people don't understand yet how this technology works, how many technologies are AI-enabled, and so it is important to be aware. We know from the research that when you tell people that AI is, that the system, the tool they're using is AI-enabled, they have a different reaction to it, as opposed to, oh, it's a human being on the other side, let's say, of the telephone versus the automated AI-enabled voice. So that matters, because it means it changes our behavior, and therefore it changes the interaction. So that's what's critical here with human-computer interaction. So that's why transparency is related and demands quality data, demands a true human-computer interaction with knowledge and understanding. And then further from that, there's the question of model interpretability. So it goes back to the point I was mentioning earlier of oversight. Well, the question you asked me about oversight, this is where that also falls under this whole umbrella term of transparency, where if you don't understand the system, you don't understand where the data is coming from, and you don't really understand what the ultimate outcome that you want to achieve at the end of the day, then you're not going to be able to use the technology properly. You're not going to be able to answer questions when it does fail. So putting all of that together, then I would say that ultimately transparency probably should, it is the umbrella term here for where all these pillars of ethics fall under, because if we don't have that, then we cannot ensure that we can then be able to explain problems of accountability. So you can't really understand who's at fault if you don't understand the system and who is crewing the system, who is actually using it. Because then you could argue, well, okay, maybe it's the individual who's using it, they don't understand it, so they failed to actually be able to use the system the way it's supposed to be used, and so they misused it, let's say. Or the reverse, we don't understand how that system itself, it's decision-making, logic, processing, and so then we want to put blame on that, but obviously you're not going to put blame to this inanimate object. So it ties all of these questions of what ultimately the quality we want from this relationship with a non-human entity.
Thank you very much. So, Tarja, how do cultural values and societal norms influence what we consider ethical AI? Can a global AI system respect local values?
No, this is a great question, and kind of, echoing everybody who has been talking here on this panel and even before, we are in such an early stage of this transformation, and the data shows right now, like over 90% of the companies, I always put that company leadership hat on, 90% of the companies are saying, yes, we need to implement everything on their workforce right now. However, when we ask leaders how ready they feel, only 2% say they're ready. And that really shows how early we are. So with the cultural, we have universal cultural principles that we want to follow, but then every company has their own. And right now, I think the leaders really need to stop and start understanding those invisible cultural cues we have, and as well, our invisible intelligence, like I like to call, ethics, our empathy, really much what the culture is built on, because that will also affect how are we building now AI agents, digital counterparts, and bringing this technology into our daily workflow. So my background is actually in shipbuilding. I'm from Finland, and we brought lean methodologies into incredibly big projects, and yes, we thought it's all about productivity and having that technology and methods embedded into a new way of doing. But at the end of the day, it was the culture, it was the people. Am I willing to take new things, new ways of doing, when I still need to be doing everyday operations and now designing future? So the big question is right now with the culture as well, that we are willing to take that into our daily life, and if we are willing, are we able to do? And now the technology comes with the tools and support, and I'm very big advocate of education, that we all need to be educating ourselves from the mailroom to the boardroom. That way we can embed that culture into the technology.
I'm going to be a bit more technical now. Maybe, Andreas, as you are working with a robot, you are like the father of the robot, which makes me the grandfather because he's my son. What is the process that you are working now in making this robot more interactive? I mean, maybe explain the audience what needs to happen. For the moment, this robot is not talking, is reacting to some of the things we say. But what needs to be done and how that model approach builds up?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this robot is a platform, right? It's a textual platform where upon each many modules can be built on. So, for example, the speech, it could be speaking to us already. We need to attach a module that has semantic capabilities when able to have an interaction with the human. And if you support the language, you can have a natural conversation with this robot. So it's an amazing platform. Not only, I mean, dialogue, but it can also like help people in a day-to-day life. It could help, do your chores, or it could like help in case of emergency if there's like a building that has an issue, if there's any kind of attack. Some kind of robots can be used, not necessarily humanoid, because a humanoid shape is adapted to some of the infrastructure that we're using, because we're all humans here, except him. But yeah, I mean, lots of things can be done. Actually, I'm using this remote right here to control it, but if we had a place where he could be trained upon, like a specific space where he can complete some task, he can do many, many interesting things. This specific robot doesn't have any working hands, but this also can be attached. So we can make him be able to manipulate some object, can be very sensitive. Some models already can cook today. But it's a long process. Lots of work is being done year to year to make those robots even more capable to the day-to-day.
This one, by the way, fights. He can do karate, and actually, we tested in the. We fight with him, and he kicked us back. Sorry, no, you guys, okay. So he's already very reactive. But obviously, as Andrea explained, this is like an iPhone where you can add many apps that keeps the iPhone doing different things. So that works in the same way. You can keep adding models, training. There's no limitation of what they can do. The robotic arms and the legs, this is the mechanical part. It's less important. What is important is the brain. And anyway, so yeah, I think he's, I don't know what he's doing now, but he's tired, yeah, okay. So anyway, just go back again to our discussions. I'm going to go to Philippe. What is the one decision we must get right now to ensure AI and robotics serves humanity and not replace or diminish it?
So I think in general, I'm talking more and more about it, and it was touched before in the previous panel. It's basically, we can become better human if we do it right, which means we should now focus the human on critical thinking, cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence, and then let AI do that. But we have a big risk of not doing that, and I'll talk about different generation. You know, we grew up before that time, so we have this critical thinking and all that, we have that. But if you don't teach that to our kids, they are going to become robots. And you know, if you follow a little bit healthcare, you know, so there was already some years back, they said, you know, that ChatGPT was more empathetic than a doctor. You know what I'm saying? Sorry for the bad word. It's bullshit. The problem is that the doctors are becoming robots. A GP today, in a 10-minute visit, spends 80% of the time in front of the screen, not looking at the patient, entering data, and more data. And I'm the last one to say we don't need the data. We need the data. But you don't study medicine, years of medicine, to be in front of the screen and entering data. And that's my point, you know. We need to use AI to get rid of all these non-added value stuff, you know, so that we can become better human again. And I think that's something which we can achieve, but it's not easy. Because, you know, on the other side, healthcare is not easy to change. Education is also not the quickest industry to change. And sorry to say that, back to the Europe discussion that Ali had before, honestly, I'm getting tired of Europe. People who know me know that I'm more and more in the UAE, for example. So you might be shocked, but the UAE started in April to teach AI in the kindergarten. And of course, they don't have all the teachers. In Europe, it would take 10 years because, you know, we have first to train the teachers. Now, first we talk for a few years, you know, and then we have to train the teachers, and then you can bring it to the school, and then you have missed the train. So I think we live in a different time. Everything is going quicker. You see the progress with the technology. I said, I'm an older generation. I was in a time where technology was not able to deliver what we need. Now technology is quicker than we adapting to the technology. So we get big and challenge. Even a short comment of what was said before about, you know, the discussion about the car, the autonomous car, who is responsible? Carlos, since when do we have that discussion? Since years. What is the decision? What is the regulation? Nothing, you know, so that's what I'm saying. We are talking too much. It's a time that we act and we do things, and of course, keep the human in the mind, you know. We should reinforce our humanity and be humans, you know. I love to see people here, different generation, different things. I just missed one point. I have a friend here, Katerina, you know. Her mother left. She's here. You know, she's with her mother. This is the generation, you know. We don't have this, there's a way not to have this generation gap. You know, I met her yesterday, and I said to her mother, be proud of your daughter. She was close to cry. That's being human. I love people crying. Is a robot going to cry? Yeah, maybe if you put some water inside, but we have feelings. You know, so I think that's what I want. We need to reinforce our humanity and let the machine do what the machine can do.
That's a very good way to close this round table, because we're going to serve lunch and we're going to move to the space round table. But before that, how many of you guys will bring this robot to your house to help you cook or clean? How many of you? Raise your hands. Oh, that's pretty loud. Okay. So who doesn't want at all this robot in their house? Okay, so we are actually, if that question a few years ago will have been totally different answer, right? So he's happy, and he thank you everybody for your participation and attention, and he is thanking actually the roundtable for the excellent speakers, and we will continue this discussion. So next year we'll come in with a more intelligent, more wise robot, which is his name. Thank you very much, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, I will request now the third roundtable, Quantum Space, if you can join us at the podium. So, the third roundtable. I apologize if you are eating, but we need to maintain the time.
Sorry for inviting me to the session. It was great. I'm glad that you are like so well.
I used to work with Hamadoun Touré. You know?
Okay. You used to work with him.
I was with him when WISeSat started.
Okay.
I participated.
Amazing.
Also with Alexander Ntoko.
Yeah, Alexander.
He's still there, right?
Yeah, he's still there.
Yeah.
He's still in my sector. Yeah.
So I've been working with them for many years.
Well, that's great. No, like it was a great discussion. I think.
We continue in contact because we do that all the time around the world, you know.
Yeah,
So,
and we, if you ever want to host an event at our Global Summit, like feel free to reach out.
Maybe once we do the project with the army, you know, because that's a very interesting project for Switzerland, you know.
Yeah,
we will discuss now.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tu les laisses là-bas, parce que. Okay, so please let's discuss at the round table. We have a very large, but very. Mets-toi à côté. Tu peux te mettre là, c'est bon. Oh yeah. Yeah, you go there. Yeah, go. Yeah. You moderate. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate what you are eating. That you eat in silence, so we can start the round table. Hello. 1, 2, 3. The robot is coming. Please, if you don't mind, to be in silence so we can start the round table. I really appreciate that. Okay, so we are at the third round table. This round table is going to be focusing on quantum technology and space. This intersection is a very interesting intersection because quantum security in the year 2026 is going to be one of the major discussion points. And everybody understands that the space is actually the ideal location for the next generational computing. As we are putting a lot of new things in the space, not only satellites, but also compute in the space and in the future data centers. So the space infrastructure is actually real now, and the entry level has become low. Launching costs is being reduced substantially, and the satellites are increasing capabilities exponentially, several tiers. So there is a good time to open the discussion. So we have a very prestigious roundtable with experts from the space and quantum technology, and we also have the honor to have with us the Swiss Air Space Military, which they are coming with some very interesting project. So maybe I start like all the roundtables, if you guys can just introduce yourself. And by the way, I'm also happy to have a lady in the roundtable. This is, we always trying to find ladies that represents the crypto space world. So we have Maria Pia with us today. So I give you, the roundtable starts with your presentation.
Thank you, Carlos. So my name is Ludovic Monra. I'm the commander of the new Swiss Space Command. Please, may I have your attention? That's the military guy speaking.
That's a military, isn't it?
So we created in Switzerland a space command responsible to develop new capabilities in space regarding imagery, intelligence gathering, telecommunication, precision navigation, defensive counterspace, and of course we have a high interest to have the best security for our own communication, be it to provide to the troops or for the telemetry and commands.
So just...
Hello everyone, my name is Grégoire Ribordy. I'm a physicist by training and the co-founder of a company called ID Quantique, a Swiss company in Geneva, which we founded in 2001 to work on quantum communications and how to ensure long-term data security. Last year, the company was acquired by IonQ. We're now part of IonQ, the quantum computing and quantum platform company. And in terms of space applications, we're involved in two missions. One is a European Union mission called Eagle-1 to deploy a first quantum key distribution satellite. And this is a project run by SES and TESAT. The idea, often when we talk about the quantum risk, quantum computing making cryptography vulnerable, one approach to secure, to fix this, is to use new mathematical problems, post-quantum cryptography. But there's also another approach, which is to use quantum against quantum to do communications at the quantum level. And doing this allows to detect interception of data. This is a technology called quantum key distribution. It can be done in optical fibers and satellite. And maybe in 10 seconds, the last thing we're doing is that we also use quantum to generate high-quality randomness. And randomness is very important in cryptography to produce keys. And we're also involved in a project where we provide, for the next generation of Galileo satellites, we provide the source, this random number generator based on quantum that are space qualified, and we're working with Thales on this.
Thank you very much.
It's quite amazing. My name is Luc Piguet. I'm the CEO of ClearSpace. At ClearSpace, we build a tow truck for space. Essentially, we build the capacity to inspect, to service, extend the life of a satellite, or dispose it in a clean way. Essentially, it's the servicing layer that comes for the space infrastructure that allows to, at the same time, extend the life of assets in space to make sure that the environment remains operable and clean, but also to protect assets and support sovereign capabilities.
Thank you very much.
I'm Jonathan Certain. I'm the president and CEO of Axiom Space. We're primarily a human spaceflight company. We're building the replacement to the International Space Station. We have an astronaut program, and the next man and first woman to walk on the moon will walk in an Axiom spacesuit. So we're pretty proud of that lineage that we have. But we've also built an in-space compute capability. So the necessary attributes of safe communications for human spaceflight often are also enable secure compute in space, and so we've built this capability. We've got our first two compute payloads operational on some Kepler spacecraft. We can talk about what optical or what orbital data centers actually mean. That phrase is not something that I'm in love with, but I can explain that in a little bit. Looking forward to the panel.
Hi, my name is Maria Pia Akiveke. I'm a token economist technologist and a system strategist architect. I'm part of WISeKey's board member and also former board member of the pension fund administrator industry. I contributor of very well-known financial and crypto media like Diario Financiero in Chile and CoinDesk. I teach about disruptive business models enabled by technology. And I'm super happy, thank you, Carlos, for this invitation, because the space is opening a new economy where quantum is going to be needed by design.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mohammed Abulmegd. I'm Vice President at Sandbox AQ, responsible for our cybersecurity business. Sandbox AQ is a quantum AI company that spun out of Google, or out of Alphabet, actually, in 2022. It was founded within Alphabet because Sergey Brin wanted to be able to challenge the team with how do you solve really big world problems by leveraging quantum and AI technologies. spun out in 2022. Eric Schmidt is the chairman of our board. We've raised over $1 billion in capital. And on the cybersecurity side, we help with two things: the safe deployment of AI and with post-quantum cryptography as well. So we work with financial services customers, defense departments. We work with the Department of War in the US, for example, different critical infrastructure companies as well, to help them get ready for post-quantum cryptography. We have a number of cryptographers on staff as well. Actually, 2 of the 5 algorithms recommended by NIST were authored by SandboxAQ. So a really important topic for us, and one that we believe a big amount in, and proud to be partnering with our partners on helping them get there. And thank you for the invitation to the panel.
Sure, thank you, pleasure.
My name is Emile de Rijk. I'm the founder and the CEO of Swiss212. We are a company that builds communication satellites. What we have done is we have made communication satellites smaller, faster to build, and more cost-effective, which essentially lowers the barrier of access to space and allows for more diverse communication missions, but also missions embarking future-proof capabilities, such as the ones we will be discussing today on this panel. Our satellites are being developed in collaboration with the European Space Agency, who are a key partner of ours, and we are currently building 5 satellites for some of the biggest telecommunication operators in space in the world, and very happy to be here today to contribute.
Thank you. My name is Benjamin Guyot. I'm a space lawyer per education, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Space Talk, a Swiss-based company providing a system for the global space traffic coordination. So we focus on the dialogue between all space operators based in competing space powers. And I thank WISeKey for this invitation.
Thank you very much.
First of all, I would like to say thank you, Carlos and WISeKey team, for this great event. I'm always amazed that Carlos' vision is always 5 to 10 years ahead of everybody. And now we are discussing something which, which will be implemented probably in some years from now. But it's good to start discussion. My name is Murat Seyit-Nepesev. I am the president of the Greater Caspian Association. We do promotion and development of 18 countries, the region between Romania and Bulgaria and Kazakhstan, Caspian region, Central Asia, South Caucasus, and Black Sea region. And for me, the main interest here is to get new ideas, what could be implemented in our region. And our region is slightly different from Europe, from Switzerland. We don't have so much connectivity in the region. We have a lot of problems. That's why all this is really great. And some of the ideas could be really critically important for our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Murat. And he also has one of the largest fleet of boats, containers travel around the world, and they need to be connected by satellite. So thank you for joining us again in Davos. So I'm going to try to, first of all, I am very impressed and at the same time happy to see so much Swiss innovation in space. I think this is, it shows really, normally all the roundtables that we organize is pretty international. We have a lot of Americans, but this in roundtable, we have a lot of Swiss. And this is interesting because Switzerland being a small country, that vision to go to the space and to use the space as an infrastructure where we can build the Switzerland of the future is actually very encouraging, as this is also obviously boosting the companies that they are being involved in developing that infrastructure. But I think one of the key differentiations is actually the fact that the Swiss Army, it has that vision as well, because otherwise we could stay talking for a long time before we have something concrete happening. So Ludovic, one question for you, and we start with you. What level of sovereign control is required for national quantum communication assets deployed in space? And how does quantum secure space communication change military command, control, and situation awareness?
Well, it's a question which, of course, involves a big answer. First of all, we have to remember that last year, in April of last year, the US Space Force declared war as space as a war-fighting domain. It was the concretization of a movement. That means that the next war will take place in space, and maybe the next war will begin in space. That was the French president said a couple of weeks ago. We have to be sure that it's not the case. Quantum computing is a disruptive factor. We heard that before, AI is disruptive. The more disruption you have, the more chances or risk you have of war. because some people are seeing advantages and a potential benefit to declare war or to act in a warring manner, not declaring war officially. So for us, it's essential to control everything regarding the security of own data. We need the resources and the methods and the tactics to prevent war in space and to keep peace. And for that, you need some military forces. Do the same in space as for the navigation, for the policing of the airspace. We need to police space, and for that you need to have secure communication. You need to be able to prevent somebody to know your intent, your plans, your actions, to be not previsible and to be able to intervene as fast enough so that you prevent an escalation of the situation. Of course, that would be a good thing if we had some other people, purely Western people here on this panel, because it's a geopolitical situation and the risk of conflict is between the West and the non-West.
Thank you very much. I fully agree with you. I think Switzerland could become maybe an example, a benchmark how to do that without the confrontation aspect, right? The world needs solution. That's the subject of the World Economic Forum this year, is dialogue, right? How can we build bridges versus breaking them. So maybe, Ribordy, Grégoire, you founded ID Quantique. That was actually, we were the two first startups in Switzerland, right? WISeKey 27 years ago, something like that. And we were actually at the beginning of the e-voting project in Switzerland when we deployed the first ever binding e-voting project online using a mobile phone and a screen. You have evolved all the way into the full quantum spectrum, but quantum is many things. Maybe can you break for the audience what is really the quantum stack and where you position yourself on that stack? And maybe also about the qubits requirement in order to have something like a threat in this sector.
Yes. Yes, you're right. You know, we both started companies very early. Now, I typically say that I started IDQ in the quantum field probably 15 years too early. So, you know, if I tell you something about timing, don't listen to me or take it with a pinch of salt. Yeah, so quantum, you know, quantum is the science that was developed in the first 30 years of last century. And there was a first quantum revolution. This is all the IT technology that we have today comes from quantum, you know, semiconductors, lasers. But it's quantum when you use a lot of quantum objects together. And we're now at the beginning or the end of the beginning of a second quantum revolution where you use individual quantum objects to do things that are not possible with classical technologies. And there are essentially three areas. One is quantum computing, using qubits, so encoding information on quantum objects, and that allows you to make calculation much faster, super useful in optimization, AI, drug discovery, but also it brings a threat, the so-called Shor algorithm, which was invented in 1994 by Peter Shor, and that allows to factor large integers and break the cryptography that we use until now, more or less. And you know, and that's a challenge. One way to address this risk is post-quantum cryptography, but also using a second area of quantum communications, using quantum object to send information. And so if you send photons, particles of light, in an optical fiber, typically in classical communication, you send millions of photons per bit. And so it's possible to intercept these pulses by, you know, just taking a few % of the light, you get 100% of the information. Now, if you send one photon at a time, it's a quantum object, and in quantum, if you measure something, you modify it. So that allows to detect perturbation. A second application of quantum communication is to connect quantum computers. Because just like with classical computers, when you build a computer at some point, it becomes economically better, instead of making a bigger one, to just make two and network them. And the third pillar of quantum technologies is sensing. Of course, if you use very fragile objects, these are good to measure physical properties. So you can use quantum technologies to measure the magnetic field, gravitational field, application in positioning. And so these are the three fields of the second quantum revolution. And I would say, you know, now is really the time. And I think the next 5 years are going to be extremely interesting. We heard in the very first panel this morning by a gentleman from IBM that they're planning to have a quantum computer that can break RSA in 2029. 2029 is tomorrow. You know, if you look at the security infrastructure that we use and that we need to upgrade, it is tomorrow. And so that's an important thing to note is that we, as all organizations, must have a quantum strategy to get ready.
And this is actually, thank you very much, and this is actually a full or a strategy on SEALSQ to provide a PQC capability before that threat arrives, right? Because in the United States now you have the CNSA 2.0 that basically says that all the critical infrastructure of the United States needs to be PQC enabled before the year 2027 in order to avoid a potential disaster in 2029-30. So yeah, absolutely a great momentum. But back to the space sector, Luc Piguet, question is, what minimum operational rule, collision avoidance, debris mitigation, end of life must be embedded in quantum satellite constellation from day one? What is your views on that?
So yeah, I think that at the end, a satellite integrating quantum computing or capabilities is a satellite, fundamentally. When we look at it, obviously we're not experts in quantum. What we do is servicing. So our concern is, how do we build a space infrastructure of tomorrow that is capable of doing more with less, ideally, and capable actually to be resilient, to be sustainable, to be able to operate in a way that is not possible today, to provide also agility and mobility as we move forward. So I think the regulation the policies and regulation that are being put in place right now to make sure, first of all, that we don't produce more space debris are what's needed, concretely. But then beyond that, any spacecraft as we move forward have to be more and more thought through in a way that it can be serviced. Essentially, the thinking behind it is that today we have servicing on the road, we have servicing in shipping, in the shipping industry, we have servicing for aviation. We don't have servicing for space. The question is what happens once you're able to do that. The other element is that there's a lot of element of operation that you can integrate out of the gates. For example, have to change hardware, replace hardware, being able to upgrade the technologies as they move forward on the spacecraft, on the capacity in orbit. And those require a very different way to look at the space infrastructure and the way we operate it. So to be able to actually implement most of the changes we want to do in the future, we need an infrastructure is able to operate differently than the one we have today, which essentially is built as a consumable that is single use. But really think through, okay, fine, how do we make an infrastructure that can be maintained, upgraded, improved, can be moved? How do we provide mobility in orbit in a way that we cannot do until now? So that's really the concern we have.
Thank you very much. It's actually an amazing company, you know. They're solving one problem that not many people are trying to solve, right? That's. I go to Jonathan from Axiom Space. So why is space emerging as the most trusted layer for global quantum key distribution compared to terrestrial fiber networks? On that area also, it's important to know that some quantum companies actually are acquiring a space company, like the IonQ acquisition of Capella, and also the Signal company. We also have WISeSat attached to SEALSQ. So this is actually an interesting market emerging now on combination of both. So yeah, sorry, the question is, why space is emerging as the most trusted layer for global quantum key distribution compared to terrestrial fiber networks?
I don't know that I would make the comparison orbital versus terrestrial. I think orbital offers a different component of resiliency that's not enabled on the ground. And that additional or alternative resiliency is the combination of a kind of a slew of emerging technologies that have all emerged over the course of the last several years. In-space solid-state compute, radiation-tolerant, low-swap devices really allow you to store substantial amounts of data on individual spacecraft. Combine that with optical communication terminals, which can take advantage of wave division multiplexing and maybe in one day polarization division multiplexing to enable post-quantum encryption. That technology is now well established. Starlink, OneWeb, Amazon Leo are all using these optical communication capabilities to improve the overall bandwidth, the backplane, if you will, of the spacecraft network, 400 gigabits per second. is something that's achievable these days. So sufficient compute is the last technology necessary to have a sufficient data center capability, if you will, and the combination of all of those things allow for secure communications in space. That also allows sovereign nations access to that secure communication without necessarily having to build the overall infrastructure that larger sovereign nations can do on their own. And so the combination of all of those different technologies, I think, is what enables that post-quantum encryption deployment in space. I think the last part of this, which is kind of Axiom focused, really is as humanity expands to access additional resources, it's necessary for secure communications. And so those investments, whether those are for in-space servicing, in-space secure communications, or permanent human presence in settlements in space, all of those things require these technologies. And it's just, as AI is accelerating applications for advanced compute, it's also enabling ancillary, maybe spin-off technologies, spin-off commercial enterprises like a human establishment in space. And so it's really an exciting time to see all these things emerge at the same time. It's also a scary time because of the capabilities that it enables. So I'm going to keep my head down in color.
I fully agree. So before we go to you, Marie-Pierre, I would like to involve Mohamed on that discussion. So Mohamed, how should organizations prioritize migration to post-quantum cryptography in space and hybrid infrastructure? Maybe also, because you are a sandbox, some information about the combination of AI and quantum, how that relates. This is part of your core technology.
Yeah, of course. I think maybe I'll answer the second question first. So when we look to apply quantum technologies and AI together to solve real problems. And most of the time when most people kind of mention quantum, they think about quantum computers. But there's all sorts of other technologies that are quantum-based. Quantum sensing is one of them. Our CEO just gave a talk actually and explained kind of this concept at another one of the houses where sensors today, an example of a sensor would be like a thermometer, where you have kind of old technology that can sense the temperature in the room and then be able to change it based off of some old technology that takes place. Quantum sensors can do something very similar, being able to sense kind of the changes in on the quantum level. We leverage those types of technologies to solve different use cases. So an example is with navigation and GPS. GPS is one of the most spoofed technologies out there. I think the president of the EU Commission just experienced an attack or an incident at the end of last year where GPS spoof happened. It was blocked. The plane lost its navigation and had to be able to land on short notice. What we are trying to do at Sandbox, an example of where we're applying quantum technology, is apply quantum sensors to planes, be able to understand where the plane is relative to the magnetic field of the Earth that's been imprinted into the crust of the Earth, same types of magnetic fields that we play around with our compass and other things as well, and then be able to navigate the plane relative to where it is in the Earth. So there we leverage quantum sensors to understand where the plane is. We leverage our AI to be able to take that signal, filter out the noise, and then be able to confidently guide the plane. So we're really looking at different ways to be able to apply AI and quantum technologies to solve some of these really interesting problems. When it comes to cryptography...
So in that would be around physical AI, right? That
would be physical AI, yeah. Yeah, when it comes to cryptography, and we span across the board in terms of the number of different use cases we solve for, really at the core is we want to take quantum technologies and AI and solve a broad range of use cases. So that navigation one is one that that is one example. And it's not just airplanes. I mean, we're working with submarine manufacturers to be able to navigate submarines as well. I don't think we're working with anybody in any spacecraft or any kind of space use cases, but I can definitely see that there's maybe a potential for us to be able to do that and help out with that use case as well. When it comes to cryptography, I mean, getting ready for when PQC Day or for when Q Day comes is going to be absolutely critical. The date that was mentioned of 2029 is when IBM thinks a quantum computer is going to be able to break RSA is going to come out, is absolutely coming. It's going to be within this decade. And all of our digital infrastructure depends on encryption, and that's what's going to be broken and what's going to be at risk. So being able to upgrade to post-quantum cryptography is going to be absolutely critical for us to be able to do. And it's not even a 2029 problem, it's a today problem. What we're seeing in the conversations we have with different organizations is they're getting attacked today, and we're seeing what we call harvest now and decrypt later attacks, where adversaries are finding weak points in your infrastructure, they're breaking in, they're stealing critical data, which are the crown jewels. These are the mission critical data that's absolutely important for every organization, and they're waiting for when quantum computers are going to be able to break it. So a lot of the organizations we work with don't just see the urgency of getting ready for when Q-Day comes out, they see the urgency today that they need to address.
Thank you very much, very comprehensive. Maria Pia, who should control and access the space-based quantum computing resources, state alliances, or global public-private platform? Which is your view on that?
Layered. Layered. We need states to set the red lines. We need alliances to create standards and avoid the fragmentation and include cooperation for responses, to keep the system resilient. And at the same time, we need public and private platform partnerships to scale this. But before dipping on this, I would like to wrap up something that is very, very interesting, that it has to do that space capabilities have been really, really like leapfrogging. So now it's moving from just connectivity to giving other capabilities that are surveillance and of key infrastructure for mining, for energy, and at the same time, this is going to be the backbone of a new financial asset. This is going to be a space-based financial assets. That is already starting. There's some insurances that they just activated with the surveillance done from space. So that's why we need this layered strategy. Also, space is very interesting because this is a blank space. We can use all the technologies that are converging, using DLTs and whatever is needed, AI, etc., to avoid what is happening on Earth. That is, that we are not cooperating, and that we are giving the wrong incentives also from the financial markets.
It's actually unfair. We are talking and they are eating, huh?
Yes.
Okay, so back, Emile, how do new RF and antenna technology enable scalable and cost-effective quantum communication satellites?
Well, I think having strong communication capabilities to and from space and between assets in space is of course the backbone that you need, and that's going to exchange the information that you will want to encrypt. So we're really very active at Swiss212 on that layer of the infrastructure. We have innovated a lot in what's called payload technologies for radio frequency communications using novel technologies like 3D printing to essentially package the amount of data throughput that you would traditionally find in much larger satellites into much smaller satellites, which is very helpful to just disaggregate the infrastructure and to the point previously made, also create more layers to the infrastructure that can add resiliency to a global network. And then if you combine this with, for instance, quantum key distribution techniques, you can create a very safe and reliable network to communicate with.
And what is the regulatory aspect of it in order to establish those connections? Do you, maybe just...
So from a radio frequency perspective, of course, you needed an ITU filing to emit radio frequencies out of orbit. So this is a very well-oiled system that works since decades. But when it comes to optical, you don't. So when you work in the optical domain, you actually have very little regulatory limitations to establishing inter-satellite optical links, or even distributing quantum keys through optical means from orbit to ground or between assets in orbit.
Because yesterday I gave a keynote at The Economist, and I was with an expert, American expert, and they were telling us that they have a constellation of 200 satellites with optical capability that they are able to map the Earth at 200 meters, 300 meters, so they are able now with AI to detect if one country, for instance, is organizing troops in the border in another country. So all that intelligence now is being collected from the space, analyzed with AI, and then used to create predictability analysis and what-if analysis scenarios. It's actually amazing how it's becoming the Google of indexing the material thing, the physical thing. Let's go a bit on the secure satellite communication aspect with Benjamin. How does quantum-safe satellite communication differs operational from traditional encrypted SATCOM?
Difficult to say. It's not really my topic on this, but it's more communication and secure communication will greatly help more space traffic in general, because we face a difficult situation today where we have no unique system for the global space traffic coordination, in particular no dialogue between operators based in the US and in China. So building a unique system implies secured satellites data, and quantum computing will greatly help this, in particular for space traffic on low Earth orbit, but also for the deep space exploration missions. When you send space objects to Jupiter, for instance, you need to use the force of the various planets on the road. And it's only by having a very strong calculation capacity through this quantum computing technologies that you will be able to improve and to improve the missions, and in particular also for the low Earth traffic assessment. So we all wait for this, but there is also a question of timing, because satellites do not all have the latest technology on board. For some space objects, satellites developed by Starlink, for instance, they build satellites in about a few months, 1 year, so they can really implement very latest technology. But for other space objects, you need sometimes 20 years to develop them, such as the James Webb Space Telescope, meaning that you don't really have the latest technology inside. So it means that when you're going to have quantum technology for space connections, you will not be able to connect all existing space objects, and you're going to have old car on the road still working while not being able to communicate with others. So there will be really maybe 20 or 30 years to have a full implementation of this kind of technology in space.
I agree. So Murat, what signals should investors look for to identify valuable quantum space business model? And maybe also because you are so much involved in with the United Nations on the trust issues. Well, how can we bring trust into space? What will be the key elements for it?
Yes, I think one of the options is still to use United Nations. Because today in the world there's only one trusted platform, and of course there are a lot of problems with the budget crisis and so on. And under the umbrella this could be done, the trust. And another idea is, like was already mentioned by my friend Nicholas, that to create kind of council of experts who are really well-known and trusted professionals who can write recommendations which could be later implemented through the international organizations. And of course, in the United Nations, there's ITU, for example, also International Telecommunication Union. They could be very much effective in building this trust. Otherwise, if you will give this to the particular countries, particular governments, they will pull on their side all the time, then there will conflict in interest, and you will never get the proper trust. On the other side, to give it to the business community also, then there will be no trust from the government side. That's, I think, the only solution here, international organizations.
And do you think, because the space is so broad, so big, and it's going to be so expandable, do they need to have a specialized agency for that? Because ITU covers telecommunication, AI, it's too much on their plate. What will be your view? Is that a space? Do we need to create an international space agency in Geneva?
Knowing how United Nations agencies are working, I think better to create something new. Because to reform ITU, for example, is a mission practically impossible. It will take ages, and then we will have in 5 years the new ideas on your sessions, and they will not be able to follow up. That's why, yes, something like International Space Agency in Geneva, for example, will be the great idea. Yeah.
Because the space is going to become vertical, geopolitical, and sovereign, right? That's the way it goes, and that maybe just connect to the question to Ludovic. How should defense institutions assess the real world timeline on quantum threat versus today's cyber risk? Is that can you sleep at night?
Well, yes. I can sleep at night. But frankly, of course, there is a huge amount of risk of things going from bad to worse, especially in space. The reason why I try to sleep good at night is to put things forward and to develop solutions, especially in Switzerland, sovereign solutions. That's the reason why we have been developing our partnership with WISeKey and especially WISeSat in the last 3 years to have a solution when you have a sovereign capability to encrypt our own telecommunication. When we know from end to end that the data will be secure, at least for a certain amount of time. Because the whole thing regarding this quantum computing, it's a matter of time. You will decrypt messages, but the time that the message will be decrypted with PQC is enough to allow some tactical actions and to have some real-time reactions to the data you get from space. So the real solution is to have this layer of security being put on over all other parts of military operations to ensure your sovereignty and, of course, the integrity of your decisions.
Absolutely, and maybe because space is expensive, and I can tell you, I launched some satellites, and it costs a lot of money to launch satellites. What is the business model? Anybody of you want to discuss about the business model on the space? How do we make money out of space? Is by providing satellite as a service? Is by developing, launching capability? Europe is very unserved in what concerns launchers. We have the legacy ones, but the new ones are struggling for finding money. I just came from India. I visit ISRO and Skyroot, and Skyroot is having a lot of financial problem. ISRO is not performing as good as SpaceX. So investors get a bit scared, to enter into this sector because it's still very in infancy. Anybody of you guys have views on that? Yeah.
Maybe I will start because I'm somehow related to the business and investor, also business on the ground. And as I told, I'm from the Caspian region, and the Caspian region is, especially the Central Asian part of it, the least covered by the usual mobile network. And we did the research together with WISeKey. Some years ago, we saw that practically 80% of the territory is not covered. And then the only solution is the space, the satellite communication. And we were discussing the project, how to organize track and trace system for containers, not only for containers, it could be for everything, for trucks. And then the only option is to go via space. And here there is a very clear monetization model. And could be really attractive for the investors, because if you don't have traceability, you don't have bank financing, you don't have insurance, or you overpay this, and then of course clients they don't know where their cargo is, where is the container, they're losing their contracts, and so on and so on. That's why it's clearly the business case. And I think here satellite communication it's really critical, and here for the investors. It should be very good, very attractive, and it's very profitable also, because sky is the limit. You can charge quite a significant amount.
And we have Starlink IPO at 15, what is it, 1.5 trillion, right? That's the offering. So that's going to activate the appetite of investors this year. By the way, I am doing an IPO WISeSat in end of March, 250 million markup initial. So that means that there is opportunity, but we are still struggling to have we understand how to make money, sending the satellite, renting the satellite, but what is the recurrent revenue model that you can activate for satellites? You want to say?
Well, so at least for human spaceflight, first of all, there are many sovereign nations that want to train astronauts, and that builds an anchor tendency. So while that's still an expensive enterprise, the cadence of launches is driving down the overall cost, and the standardization of lots of different components in the supply chain are driving down the expense associated with procuring and assembling and launching and operating spacecraft. SWIS-12 is using innovation to drive down the costs of content in space. So it's still expensive to get things into space and operate them, but cadence is certainly making an improvement there. Standardization is certainly making an improvement there. And I think one of the more important attributes of that is setting up a security system in space, especially militaries providing the necessary protections for assets in space are driving down some of the expense for doing so. And this is how humanity has evolved as it's expanded across the globe, right? First, militaries go off, determine what resources are available, they instantiate a presence, investors come along, they put up investments, oftentimes early days very speculative investments, they get large returns on those investments, they set up settlements, they expand, they gain resource, they move on. We're in the early days of that. I akin it to 1993, sitting in your living room, you've got a modem, it's 1200 baud, it took forever to launch a website, but 15 years later, there's $1 trillion enterprise with websites. 15 years after that, there's another $1 trillion of communications, application layers, et cetera. So we're early days in space, but the necessary infrastructure to enable that growth of the economy, that's what's happening now. It is speculative in many of the types of investments that are being made, but without those investments, the large returns from things like SpaceX and others wouldn't be there because there'd be no economy, because that safety wouldn't be assured, et cetera. So, 10 years from now, I think we'll be talking about the applications that we are developing in space, not the infrastructure that we're developing in space.
And do you think, Ludovic, but maybe just on the same line, do you think the role of Europe will catch up against the, I will call the pragmatic view of the United States? Because the difference here, when I go to the United States, you have huge government support and funding for this type of activities. Many companies we know, Palantir, even SpaceX has started by being funded by government contracts. We are not able to do that in Europe. So how can we compete? Is that something that we need to teach the government about the consequences of not? Because otherwise the industry will be monopolized in one territory. Any views on that?
Well, I wouldn't say that Europe isn't competing. I would say that Europe isn't competing at scale. And Europe is not competing at scale, in Jonathan's opinion, because there's a difference between risk aversion and risk tolerance, or risk acceptance and risk avoidance. And in Europe, there's a lot of risk avoidance. And in the United States, especially with investors, there's a lot of willingness to accept some amount of risk. And the consequence of that is more available capital. And so maybe one of the things to consider in Europe is a little bit higher tolerance for risk for those investments, and the consequences might be increases in returns on dividends. But again, I think SWIS-12 is a great example, just to use that on this panel, of a combination of investment both from ESA and Switzerland and innovation that is leading to a direct competitive capability to things that that other industries, other competitors globally they're being competitive with. So I don't think it's a lack of competitiveness. I would say it's a lack of competitiveness scale because of this risk avoidance versus risk tolerance.
Ludovic, you want to say something?
Just to answer your question before, I think that it will be possible to make real money in space with the conditions Jonathan just mentioned, but when it will be faster, safer, and cheaper to produce things in space. And probably with the advent of Starship, with the development of new technologies regarding computing, the day we have data centers in space which are cheaper to operate, cheaper to build and to operate than on the Earth, it will be another revolution. Then it will be way more interesting to do things in space. Right now we are talking about off Earth. It will come. Many things won't be done anymore on the Earth.
And it's more energy sustainable as well, because space has not the same problem of energy, right?
space as a service, but not just communication, not just internet, not just data. Also, enabling other capabilities on satellites and nano-satellites, such as imagery of what is happening on Earth. Also, solar energy in space is being proved. And this is the kind of also services that can be added on top. For instance, maybe not all the solar energy in space will be for providing energy for a house or a neighborhood, but it can, for instance, more than 2,000 nano-satellites could support their access of solar energy for computing, data, and that kind of things are services that are also going to be provided. These are the space-backed financial assets, they speak, and that they're going to be as a services because there's a barrier of entrance, of course, that still it's going to prevail for a long time. And especially if, before ending, especially if you provide end-to-end solutions, like, for instance, WISeKey is creating its ecosystem that includes identity of devices on Earth, and at the same time, providing trust intersection between autonomous machine to machine. That is also a service that finally will be also, it's linked with the space capabilities. So, and you can sell them separately depending on the client needs.
So one question, Mohammed, maybe on just one question for Mohammed. The 29 Q day, as IBM said, satellites are going to be exposed. So what happened with the satellite infrastructure that we have in 29 about everything with concerns about the harvest and decrypt process? Maybe some views there, please.
Yeah, I think it's the same problems that we see for all of our infrastructure here on Earth, or terrestrial infrastructure, are the same problems you're going to see for the infrastructure that we have up in space as well. Encryption is at the heart of being able to secure the data that we have in transit, the data that we have at rest as well. And I think those use cases, those paradigms, kind of exist today with what we have with our infrastructure in space as well. And it becomes really, really critical, potentially even more critical actually, that you prioritize the infrastructure that you have in space because of the types of applications that space infrastructure really supports. Like when we work with organizations, they're usually taken aback by how much they actually have to upgrade. So one of the key things we talk to them about is prioritization. Prioritize your most critical assets first that you need to be able to upgrade to be PQC ready, to be ready for when Q-Day comes out, or just to have better encryption in general. And I think in terms of prioritization, space assets should be right up at the top of the list. So I think a similar type of approach, similar type of kind of risk exists, and because of the nature of the use cases that satellites and other space infrastructure really supports, from military to critical communications, et cetera, those should absolutely be right up at the top of the list of what we upgrade first today in terms of the encryption algorithms they utilize and beyond as well.
Thank you very much. So, any other comment? Otherwise, we'd like to close the panel. Yeah, you have something, yeah, please.
Yeah, one last comment regarding the European capacity to go in space. We have great industry in Europe on space activities. We have great minds also. It's true that we lack money, investments, but what does not count much, or what can be already done right now, is defining a strategy for the development in space. We miss this in Europe. We should now agree that we have to transfer a big part of our economy to space, and we should have a plan in the 10, 20, 30 years to come on how, on which part of our economy will be in space for the future, because it's clear that we can solve many issues we have in Europe on accessibility, on energy, on development in general. But we don't have this because maybe we are still too shy, because it looks like science fiction to imagine that we will live in space. But either we go to space and we progress and we develop, or we just die here on Earth. Huh? So it's almost a black and white choice.
Maybe, Ludovic, the battlefield in space. There is common sense that the next war is going to be in space. Do you see that coming? And what will be the way that you can protect your assets in space? I am asking now the military to...
What a question. Thank you very much, Carlos. Rulers in space. Well, there's a lot of science fiction been written on it. Of course, I don't know. But right now there is a race. There is a new race into space. And the US is winning the race. And it's due mainly to SpaceX and many things being brought with SpaceX. And I don't see a change in the next 5 to 10 years regarding this race. Because the capabilities, the technologies being brought together lead to this situation, and the reaction has been too slow to correct this in a short term. So there will be an opportunity to do new things in space, maybe on the moon, maybe on Mars, and that could be maybe a new ruler. I hope it will be still something democratic.
Thank you very much. So if you don't further questions, I don't know if the panel wants to ask any questions, otherwise we're going to close the panel and I let the panelists to enjoy the lunch. Any questions? We have a few minutes. Yeah, please.
Yes, I understand that IBM is the most advanced in quantum in terms of bits, but isn't it supposed there are other companies that are advanced and other things that can help the actual building of quantum computing?
Yes, yeah. So there's a race currently to build what people call a fault-tolerant quantum computer. So a quantum computer that is not vulnerable to errors in the calculations. And to do that, you have different ways to build the qubits, these elementary parts that you use to calculate. People talk about qubit modalities. IBM is pursuing one, which is the superconducting qubits. It's one approach. There are 3 or 4 approaches. Our company, IonQ, we work with ions, so elementary ions that are trapped. The advantage with this approach is that ions are made by nature, they're atoms, they're all the same. And so you don't have to tune ions, you get exactly identical qubits, and so that makes a lot of things easier. I think so, in general, we believe at IonQ that we have the best approach to scale this. And one of the big questions will be also how energy efficient will be a quantum computer. Because a lot of these computers require cryogenics, and if you need to cool something, to a big machine to a very low temperature, and we're talking about less than a Kelvin, so very, very low temperature, that takes a lot of energy. So, I would say the race is still on, but there are a few different companies that are trying to achieve this.
Yeah, just something quick. Isn't it supposed that in terms of infrastructure, the Finnish, in terms of infrastructure, the Finnish are the ones that are very advanced in cryotechnology.
Exactly.
So they are in Europe, so because we are talking about how we don't join forces to accelerate not only in this, but in everything, in AI, in the economy, in geopolitics.
Yeah.
So this will be an advantage because they have that.
That's a good point. There's this company, Blue Force, from Finland, which is very good in cryogenics. That's the pick and shovels of quantum computing, the tools that you need to put together. And then there's the full stack quantum computer. And to be honest, I'm a bit skeptical. I think the US will win the race for the full stack quantum computer because somehow there's not enough money going into European players. And Europe, to some extent, is afraid of picking winners. They kind of spread support kind of equally over too many competitors. In the US, there's more money, and there's also selective money. And that's why Europe is going to lose the race, but potentially still find attractive niche to provide certain parts of a quantum computer.
Actually, we are consolidating that part because we are buying Quantum Company, which has announced the acquisition for $200 million of Kubli. Kubli has a different model of IonQ. It's not at the ion level. They generate the qubits based on semiconductor technologies, which is a bit the European model. It is maybe longer, but it's more stable in terms of we know when and how we can predict the qubits to be created. And SEALSQ now is in competition IonQ. So we are friends, but at the same time we are competitors, and we are a Swiss solution, which brings another dimension of that, which is a trust model, right? So it's going to be an interesting fight. Anyway, we have been fighting for nearly 25 years. 27. But anyway, I think in any case the world needs both. I don't think it's going to be one or another. They are, you know, they are very big players. Like in Kubli is ST Microelectronics behind. Is a major player, so we are obviously very ambitious on what are our destination, and that's why we are also investing in space. So I think this was an amazing. You have one more question? Okay, maybe one question more, and then I want to wrap up. Maybe if you don't mind. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Milan Pimprikar from Montreal, Canada. You know, I heard a lot about the creating this collaborative structure, mitigating the risk, finding the, you know, the issue of funding, the defense and so on. How about, you know, something which is a quantum platform in space, like a condominium in space, where you can have encryption in space for the partner to share the data with collaborative, like a platform where European, Canadian, North American, all we have. As I said, it's you can have an encryption based on your contribution. So you could have, let's say, a satellite. Not everyone needs to have a complete satellite. You can have the proportion as a fractional ownership model, I would say, you know, where you can have countries sharing together, especially when it's looking at this quantum, you know, in terms of the safety, the security issues, and so on. Is this something that can be developed, something as a collaboration platform in space with the quantum, you know, encryption?
For my humble opinion, that's amazing vision, and it will be great if we can achieve it. But we didn't achieve that with the internet, despite that we have been trying for so many years. I think we need a new human mindset to make that possible. I think it should be, you know, because the space is universal and it's global, and the space doesn't have frontiers. You know, when you're in space, and all the astronauts when they go to the space, they really have the same opinion. Wow, the Earth is only one, and there's no border. I cannot see the difference between countries. It's a philosophical question. I don't know if we are yet wise enough as humans to reach that, but obviously that should be our objective, and I think that we should all work towards that achievement, yeah, for sure. Okay, so thank you very much. Just maybe if you can join me to give a hand to the panel for the amazing participation. And I just would like to apologize for the number of panelists. I know this is a bit unusual. Normally you have 1/3 of it. We have 30 panelists in 3 round tables, so this is amazing. But the objective was to get the opinion of everybody. We didn't want just one expert to provide an opinion. We want to decentralize knowledge and wisdom. And this was achieved, I think, by the 3 round tables, and they are very convergent. And this was the subject, is the age of convergence, where all those talents will work together towards developing a better society where humans, we can prevail and become relevant as we have been from the last 200,000 years. So thank you very much. I'm sure next year we'll have a similar event. There will be maybe more robots, less speakers. Anyway, our commitment is to continue developing the Davos agenda and make sure that Davos also has our opinion, and it's not only a political opinion, it's also the opinion of the user. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time and presence, and thank you to the panel.